Alice and Leo were a model couple for a lifetime. She bore him children, supported his parents, and accompanied him on military assignments, traveling far and wide. She thought that this man was naturally cold, strict, and solemn, and thus never expressed his affection. It wasn't until Leo passed away and she sorted through his belongings that she discovered he had always loved another woman throughout his life. But due to the marriage contract, reputation, and the public opinion of not abandoning the wife of humble beginnings, he had to compromise in their marriage. Given a second chance, Alice returned to the second year of their marriage. Once, in this year, she had conceived their first child for Leo, and now, she looked at the indifferent man and his eager little first love, a bitter smile forming in her heart. In this life, I will make this choice. Chapter 1, 1977. The family quarters of Factory 546. The meat coupons and money are on the table. You go queue up tomorrow morning and buy some meat back. Leo's voice pulled Alice from her daze. She came to her senses and looked at the tall, young man in military uniform before her. Leo had nothing more to say to her. After giving this instruction, he turned, fastened his uniform button, and without looking back, went to the military green Jeep waiting at the door. Alice watched his figure disappear into the distance, turned back to look at her brick house, and the wedding photo hanging on the wall, feeling a wave of disorientation, returning from the 21st century to the autumn of 1977. In the second year of her marriage to Leo, it took her a long time to adapt to this reality. In her past life, she married Leo at the age of 18. She bore him children, cared for her parents, transforming from a bright-eyed girl of 18 into an elderly woman with graying hair. She gave up the opportunity to attend university, relinquished a good job assigned in the city, and accompanied him as he was transferred with the military, moving far away to another place. But her efforts only earned her Leo's indifference and neglect. She thought that he was naturally cold and serious, which is why he never expressed his love for her. But it wasn't until Leo passed away, and she sorted through his belongings, that she discovered the secrets he had hidden deep within. It turned out that he did understand love and how to express it. Rather, it was because the one he truly loved was not her, his lawful wife, but another woman he could not speak of. He was constrained by the marriage contract, by reputation, and by the public opinion of not abandoning the wife of humble beginnings, which forced him to compromise in their marriage. But perhaps in his heart, he has never forgotten the girl who grew up with him. Alice, now over 50, looked at the photos and letters that Leo had cherished for many years through her reading glasses. It was only at that moment that Alice realized her half a lifetime of dedication and love was nothing but a joke. Fortunately, heaven gave her a chance to start over. She was reborn in the second year of her marriage to Leo. This time, she would no longer waste her life for that man. In the evening, accompanied by a creaking sound, the door was pushed open. Leo returned in a crisp military uniform, carrying 2 bags of pastries. The lotus cakes from the pastry factory are on the table. Alice's gaze fell on the 2 bags of pastries, her heart feeling like it was stuffed with cotton. In her past life, she thought he had specially bought these for her, and her heart was filled with sweetness. But now, she realized that they weren't meant for her at all. He bought 2 portions, one to bribe her, and the other for his beloved who would return home tomorrow. You are thoughtful, Alice said coldly. Leo did not notice the unusual tone in her voice and took out a stack of various tickets and cash from his pocket. Placing them on the table, the allowance for this month has been issued. You should keep it well. After saying that, he took off his military jacket and turned to go to the bathroom to take a shower. Listening to the sound of water splashing, Alice slowly walked to the edge of the table and tapped on the money he had left there. This month, Leo's allowance was $50 less again. In her past life, she thought that the allowance Leo brought home every month was only half because the majority went to his parents. Filial piety is the foremost virtue. Even when life was tight, she never complained. Only after seeing those letters did she understand that the money was not sent by him to honor his parents, but rather sent to Sophia. Now, as Sophia is returning to the city, the money he takes home will naturally be even less. Alice tugged at the corner of her lips, feeling that she was truly foolish in her past life. With so many glaring signs, she was completely oblivious. She tucked the money away into the empty cookie jar. At night, after turning off the lights, just as Alice closed her eyes, she felt the man beside her move, and then he pressed his warm body against her. In her past life, she mostly took the initiative while Leo went along with her, and there were very few times he actively sought anything from her. So, on this night in her past life, she was extremely accommodating, feeling warm inside. But now, when she thought of his relationship with Sophia, she only felt a wave of nausea. Alice forcefully pushed the person away, curling up against the side of the bed. Leo was a bit surprised. "What's wrong?" Alice turned her back to him, her voice very soft. "Do you have something to tell me?" Leo paused for a moment. He turned over in bed and after a while finally spoke. "Recently, due to policy changes, the educated youth who went to the countryside can return to the city as long as someone is willing to take them in." His voice was so calm, as if he were truly talking to her about an inconsequential person. "I have a relative who recently returned to the city and wants to temporarily stay at our home." In the night, Alice clutched the pillow tightly, her heart filled with sorrow. So, he bought pastries, gave her money, took a shower, and came to hold her at night. It was all just for this matter, to make her agree to let his beloved live in this home. Chapter 2. What relative? Alice suppressed the bitterness in her heart and asked calmly, "Why didn't you mention this before?" Leo was vague about the past. "When we got married, she had already gone to the countryside." "You never met her." He seemed afraid that Alice would ask too many questions, quickly turning away. "It's getting late. Let's go to sleep." Alice lay in bed, listening to his breathing, light then heavy. Knowing he was pretending to be asleep, she thought she would feel very sad and disappointed. But the truth is, she lay in bed and fell asleep after a while. Having been hurt too many times, she gradually became numb. The next evening, when Leo returned, a woman followed him, a woman in her 20s, wearing a light blue cotton dress, with two thick braids. Alice has seen quite a few educated youth returning from the countryside. Compared to the city at this time, the living conditions in the countryside are indeed very poor. Therefore, most of the educated youth who went to the countryside and then returned to the city have weathered faces and simple clothing. But the woman before me is different. Her complexion is rosy, and she looks radiant. I can't help but wonder how much money Leo has sent over the years to keep her looking this good. Leo glanced at Alice and said, "I told you last night. This is my younger sister Sophia from the countryside. She has returned to the city now, and there's no place for her at home. So she will stay with us for a while. Is this going to be not so good?" Before Alice could finish her words, Leo had already taken Sophia to lie on her side. "Come with me. The room has been tidied up. You can stay here comfortably." The tone of his voice was gentle and soft, something Alice had never heard before. "Your sister-in-law is a very accommodating person. Just treat this place like home. No need to worry." Sophia spoke with deep affection. "Leo, thank you so much. If it weren't for you, I really wouldn't know what to do." Alice stood at the door, watching the two of them in a tender moment, her eyes reddening as she slowly tightened her palm. In a past life, when Leo brought Sophia home, she strongly opposed it. It was not out of jealousy, but because bringing such a stranger home would indeed have a negative impact. He is currently working at the 546th Arsenal as a deputy regiment-level officer, and now is a critical period for his promotion assessment. She worried that someone might spread rumors about him behind his back because of this, affecting his progress. The two had a quarrel over this. Leo lost his temper and smashed a cup. Hearing their argument, Sophia turned pale and cried as she knelt before him. "Sister-in-law, I beg you. The Sue family is already difficult for me now. If Leo is unwilling to take me in, then I can only return to the countryside." Sophia cried pitifully. Leo immediately helped Sophia up, his accusations piercing her like a sharp knife. "How could you be so heartless?" In that moment, Alice felt as if her heart was being cut to pieces. Who was she being heartless for? Was it not for his future and reputation? She wiped away her tears, enduring Leo's accusations, and sent Sophia away. She looked at the increasingly bright stars on his shoulder insignia, silently swallowing all his accusations. She thought he would understand, but it was only after he died that she realized Leo had never truly let go of this matter. He always thought of her as a woman who was cold and unfeeling, driven only by money, power, and fame, and because of this, he held a grudge against her for a lifetime. Once again, Alice watched the two speaking softly to each other, a hint of sarcastic laughter crossing her lips, and she did not stop them. She returned to her room, silently dragging out her long idle high school textbooks from a corner of the wardrobe, and began to browse through them earnestly. At night, Leo returned home and saw her textbooks, his brow instinctively furrowing. He casually tossed her math book aside and reminded her, "If anyone asks about Sophia staying at our house, just say she's my distant cousin who has come to keep you company." Alice heard this and suddenly recalled something she thought she had forgotten. A thought popped into her mind. It turns out he understands everything. He knew that bringing Sophia home would lead to gossip and judgment from others. He understood that everything she did in her previous life was for his sake. Yet he still used this matter to blame her for a lifetime. Alice looked at this man, her jaw slightly trembling, and suddenly felt a bone-chilling cold. Chapter 3. The place where Alice currently works requires 3 shifts. She was assigned to the night shift, from midnight to 8 in the morning. After work, she was so exhausted that her head spun. As she pushed open the door to their home, she saw Sophia sitting on the newly purchased chair from their wedding, wearing only a fitted nightgown that revealed her 2 delicate, fair legs. On her shoulders, she wore Leo's casual jacket. "Sister-in-law, you're back." Sophia stood up, her tone gentle yet smug. "Leo just brought me breakfast from the cafeteria, but he forgot to bring yours." Alice suppressed the pangs in her heart. In her previous life, Leo had never brought her breakfast, even knowing that she had worked the night shift and was empty inside. He never showed her such consideration. She didn't argue with Sophia. She just dragged her weary body, wanting to return to her room. However, at the moment she turned around, Sophia tossed her hair, revealing a small red mark on the side of her neck. Alice initially didn't react, walking straight into the room, but when she reached the door and closed it, she suddenly seemed to realize something and froze in place. What is that red mark? Is it a mosquito bite? Or is it something he left behind? Looking back, Alice realized that in her previous life, she had also discovered hints of the connection between Sophia and Leo. At that time, her heart was completely devoted to Leo. Believing that Sophia was deliberately seducing him, she was afraid that these matters would affect Leo's reputation, and she went to great lengths to help him cover it up. Now that she reflects on it, everything she did back then seems so ridiculous. Alice closed the door and took out her Chinese language book. In this life, she did not want to invest all her emotions in a man's elusive love. She just wanted to see if, through her own efforts, she could have a brand new and more exciting life. In the evening, Leo was pushing a women's bicycle home. Alice was reading a Chinese language book indoors. Through the glass window of the bedroom, she saw Sophia joyfully running up to him, her tone playful. "Leo, you really bought this bike. It must not have been cheap, right?" Leo nodded. Alice thought back to the past. In her previous life, when Leo brought this bike home, she was also very happy. Unfortunately, she only rode it for a few days before it was taken away by Sophia, who came to visit. At that time, she had just kicked Sophia out and felt a bit guilty. So when she learned that Sophia had taken the bike, she didn't question Leo anymore. Looking back now, this bicycle was indeed the one he bought for Sophia. "Leo, can I give it a try?" Sophia looked at him with a bright smile. "Can you help me steady it?" Leo always had endless patience for Sophia, pushing her along in the yard. "Leo, make sure you hold it steady. Don't let me fall." Sophia giggled. "Do you remember when we were kids, and you took me to the fields to pick corn? You almost forgot me in the cornfield." Alice listened to the two of them reminiscing in the yard, feeling so sad that she couldn't find the words. Clearly, she was the one who married Leo, yet it felt as if she had never truly integrated into Leo's life, let alone entered his heart. Deep in his heart, he has always kept a bright memory of his childhood sweetheart. Alice thought that perhaps her marriage to Leo was nothing but a complete mistake. It was just that she loved too deeply, too foolishly. which is why she held on for so many years. At night, Alice lay exhausted in bed, her mind still quietly reciting poetry verses. With this method, she gradually began to feel a bit drowsy. But just at that moment, she felt the quilt being gently lifted. Alice opened her eyes and saw the man in the darkness. Somehow, she remembered the ambiguous kiss mark when Sophia tossed her hair. Alice softly said, "I brought you a quilt. You can sleep on that bed." Leo paused for a moment. He glanced at the new quilt at the foot of the bed. Frowning, "Alice, what do you mean?" Being asked by his wife to sleep with a separate quilt made Leo feel rejected, piercing his self-esteem. Alice didn't want to argue with him. She just wanted to maintain this hypocritical calm until after her college entrance examination. "I have to work the night shift, and you have to do the morning exercises. We'll disturb each other in the same bed." She casually found an excuse. After saying that, she no longer paid attention to Leo's reaction and burrowed into the quilt. As night fell, Leo sat at the head of the bed and watched her for a long time, eventually showing an impatient expression, turning around to go out and knock on the side door. A slender, fair hand reached out from the crack in the door and pulled him inside. Chapter 4. On the weekend, Alice is going back to her maternal family. Leo was originally going to accompany her, but early in the morning he said to her, "Today there is a batch of equipment at the factory that needs to be inspected. I have to go see it personally. I can't go back with you." Alice didn't say anything. In her previous life, she didn't take this matter to heart either, happily riding her new bicycle. But now, she knows that the bike wasn't bought for her. So naturally, she wouldn't use it again. She took some change from the drawer and waited for the bus early in the morning. After seeing her parents, she didn't go directly back to the family area, but instead went to the Xinhua bookstore in the city. Now, the newspaper has just announced the resumption of the college entrance examination, and textbooks and study materials are in high demand. She had a hard time getting her hands on secondhand math review materials and a big bundle of old exam papers from over a decade ago, and came specifically to the Xinhua bookstore to pick up the books today. The bookstore clerk, her high school classmate David, helped her bundle the books and asked with concern, "Ollie, can you carry such heavy books? I'm just off work. Let me help you carry them to the bus stop." Alice tried to lift them, but the rope really hurt her hands. "Thank you very much." Alice pointed to the bus stop across the street and said, "Could you please help me carry it there?" After reaching the bus stop, Alice thanked David. At that moment, she suddenly heard a clear female voice say, "Leo, it's so nice to be with you." Alice turned her head and saw Sophia wearing a blue checkered dress. She wore little leather shoes and had 2 braided pigtails, looking like a pure water lily. Standing next to Leo in military uniform, Leo was holding the women's bicycle, and there were several cans of yellow peaches in the basket. "What are you doing here?" Alice looked at Leo and instinctively asked. Perhaps because there were outsiders present, Leo surprisingly took the initiative to explain. "I finished checking the equipment, and since it was still early, I thought I would go to your maternal family. Just so happened that Sophia was heading into the city, so I came along." Alice didn't expect that he would fabricate such a clumsy lie. Her lips were pale, and she took a deep breath, trying not to think about the sweet scenes of them going out together. Every bit of imagination was a cruel mockery of her past life, making her heart ache with bitterness. But Sophia just wouldn't let her off the hook, pretending to say, "Sister-in-law, it was I who insisted Leo take me into the city. I have been in the countryside for many years and haven't seen the new and exciting things in the city, so don't blame him." Leo also had a very open and honest demeanor. Alice was both angry and furious, but in the end, she couldn't hold it in any longer. She slowly stepped forward, pulling out 2 tickets from under the canned yellow peaches in the basket and tossing them inside. She looked up at Leo, her eyes glistening with tears. "So, you just happened to go see a movie? These days are quite different from the future. In this era, going to the movies with someone of the opposite sex means they are either a couple or married, or they can only be siblings. It is rare to see unrelated men and women going to the cinema together." Leo's face was serious as he lowered his voice. "What are you doing acting crazy in front of others?" Alice's lips curled into a mocking smile. "Leo, do you even realize that you are married now? Who exactly is acting crazy between us? Since Sophia moved in, she has discovered more and more things that she had never noticed in her previous life, and she increasingly understands how foolish her past self was in love. She was too lazy to argue with Leo anymore. She knew very well that if she continued, Leo would bring up that excuse of sibling affection again. But where is the sister whose gift to her brother is a strand of hair? Which biological brother would treasure a strand of hair given by his sister for decades, until it was time to take it to the grave? Just then, the bus arrived. Alice carried the heavy books and got on the bus. Chapter 5. Alice returned home, just in time for the afternoon. She put down her college entrance exam review books, grabbed a cold steamed bun, and hurried to the textile factory for work. Before marriage, she had a job as a broadcaster, which was both respectable and leisurely, with a high salary. Unfortunately, she married Leo and had to move to the military family compound far out in the suburbs. As a result, she gave up her job. After marriage, she started working at the textile factory near the family compound, doing shift work and often suffering from headaches and insomnia due to night shifts. But she did not feel any bitterness in her heart. Instead, she was very happy to be able to be with the person she loved day and night. Looking back now, this was merely her one-sided wish. At 12 o'clock at night, Alice finished work. A thunderclap split the sky, and the rain fell in a steady drizzle. Some of her colleagues finishing the night shift were waiting under the eaves, while others were picked up by their families. Alice did not want to waste time. She wanted to go home early to read. So, she dashed straight into the rain. By the time she got home, she was completely soaked. After finally boiling hot water and changing clothes, a flashlight suddenly flashed outside the glass window. Alice wiped her hair with a dry towel and looked out the window. A tall man held a black umbrella, shielding the woman in his arms completely. Every move he made showcased his deep affection for her. Alice paused for a moment, and the next second she heard the sound of two people entering. At that moment, Leo saw her and was somewhat taken aback, seemingly not expecting her to run back in the rain. "Go get me a basin of hot water." He touched his nose and instructed her. "Sophia has gone to tutoring tonight. It's very tiring, so be gentle and don't disturb her." Alice didn't know what to say. When it rains, he will go pick up Sophia after class. But he never goes to pick her up, even when she looks at him with resentful eyes. He never apologizes. Instead, he orders her to fetch water. Perhaps, in his heart, she was never a wife, just a free maid who took care of his daily needs and satisfied his nighttime desires. Alice brought the boiled hot water into the bedroom. The man, under the dim yellow incandescent light, took off his coat, then removed his sweater and shirt, revealing his strong physique. The charcoal brazier in the room emitted heat, and Leo turned his back, wiping himself with a towel. Alice didn't want to pay him any attention, but as her gaze swept across his lower back, her eyes suddenly froze. On his lower back, there was a scratch. These scratches are fresh. The position and posture make it absolutely impossible to have scratched myself. In an instant, Alice felt as if her heart was blocked by a lump of cotton. The red mark on Sophia's neck flashed before her eyes again. She suddenly felt a wave of nausea, and even the person in front of her became unbearable. She thought that it was because Sophia had returned and he had been helping her all along, which led to feelings developing over time, resulting in their relationship. It turned out, so early. Alice remained silent, doing her utmost to maintain her composure. Leo did not notice her discomfort. He simply coldly asked, "Why did you bring back so many books today?" Alice felt a chill in her heart and had no intention of hiding anything from him. She said, "I saw in the newspaper that the college entrance examination has resumed. I want to participate in this December's exam." As soon as she finished speaking, she heard Leo snicker. That mocking sound fell into her ears like a whip striking her. She could tell from Leo's laughter that he was disdainful. For some reason, those events from her previous life flashed through her mind like a movie. As a high school graduate, Sophia wanted to take the college entrance examination, and Leo always encouraged her, even going so far as to help her hire a tutor. Alice also wanted to take the college entrance examination and secretly bought review materials to take home. But he mocked her, saying, "How could you possibly pass? Don't waste your time. No matter what she wanted to do, Leo always felt she couldn't do it well and would definitely fail. So, gradually, she just kept to the sewing machine and the stove, taking care of her aging parents and her growing children, living a haphazard life. Alicia was overwhelmed with immense indignation, like a surging river crashing against the dam on this stormy night, separated by past and present, carrying decades of resentment. Alicia asked him, Sophia is a high school student, and I am also a high school student. Why can she take the exam while I cannot? Leo glanced at her lightly and said, How can you compare yourself to Sophia? Chapter 6. As the days to the college entrance examination drew closer, Alice studied hard day and night while preparing for the exam. This winter is particularly cold. It started snowing at the end of November. Alice, who is afraid of the cold, wants to make herself a thick cotton coat before entering the exam room. In her past life, Alice was frugal and could only make a few pieces of clothing in a year. In this life, she has decided to let go. She took some money from what Leo gave her last month to buy fabric and cotton. Back home, the sewing machine was humming, and she was working happily. At that moment, a voice suddenly came from outside. Leo, you are so good to me. Sophia's voice came from the courtyard. This scarf feels so soft. I dreamed of having one when I was a child. Leo was riding his bicycle, carrying bags of all sizes, and Sophia was right beside him, showering him with compliments. Alice, with her keen eyes, clearly saw the paper bag he was carrying through the glass window, a foreign imported wool coat, a cashmere scarf from Kyoto's top textile factory, and little leather shoes from the Shanghai leather factory. These are the best things you can buy domestically. She looked again at the fabric and cotton in her hands and suddenly felt ridiculous. Leo returned home to see Alice, dressed in a gray coat, frowning as she sewed. Sophia said cheerfully, Sister-in-law, why don't you go to the department store to buy clothes? Making clothes yourself is both time-consuming and unattractive. Alice tugged at the corner of her lips, her hands never stopping as she continued to operate the sewing machine. Sophia said in a pitiful tone, Sister-in-law, that's not what I meant. I just think that since Leo is treating you well, you really don't have to work so hard. She placed everything she had just bought at Alice's feet. Looking guilty and unsure of what to do, these should be given to my sister-in-law first. I went out shopping with Leo, and I should have bought something for my sister-in-law too. No need. Alice did not pay any attention to those things. Sophia pressed her lips together, turned her head, and ran away, as if Alice had given her a great grievance. Leo watched her departing figure with some dissatisfaction and said to Alice, Sophia came back from the countryside, and her old clothes are all worn out and really unattractive. Now it's winter, and I saw her dressed too lightly, so I bought her some new ones. Alice listened, feeling nothing but sarcasm. Your brother is doing quite well, still remembering that sister is dressed too lightly. Comrade Alice, pay attention to your words and actions. Leo warned her, Sophia is preparing for the college entrance examination, which is a significant event in her life. You shouldn't let your petty concerns affect her. Alice listened, suddenly stepping wrong on a needle and pricking her hand. The sharp pain and inner anger made it impossible for her to maintain her calm. Leo, what do you mean by calling me petty? She stood up and questioned him. Your biological sister Ava. How many times have you bought her clothes? How many times have you taken her to the cinema? Leo was taken aback by her question, his expression dark like a storm cloud. He turned away with a pale face. For the next period of time, Leo no longer returned home and began living in the dormitory. Alice remembered that in their previous life, Leo was the same way. Once they argued, he wouldn't explain or apologize. He would just move out. Such emotional coldness made Alice restless and unable to sleep or eat. She often couldn't hold out for 2 days before bringing him soup and water, then lowering her head to admit her mistake. Regardless, was it really her fault? She loved so humbly that she could place her self-esteem beneath his feet. But this time, she didn't want to do that anymore. She didn't want to invest her emotions in a man who would never reciprocate. She should focus on her studies, seize the opportunity to change her fate, and create a brand new life for herself. With such a firm belief, the light in Alice's bedroom would stay on late into the night every day. In the blink of an eye, Half a month had passed. The two met again at Leo's mother's birthday party. Chapter 7. The mother-in-law held a birthday banquet and specially had someone call her. Alice rushed to her mother-in-law's house after finishing work. As soon as she entered the house, her mother-in-law handed her an apron. "Ollie, why are you so late? Hurry up and go to the kitchen to cook." Alice took the apron and went into the kitchen. After working for more than 2 hours, she served 8 dishes and a soup on the table. Her mother-in-law sat in the main seat, and the entire Chi family gathered around the table. Sophia also arrived, sitting next to Leo, chatting with her mother-in-law, her smile bright and cheerful. After a long day of work, Alice finally finished and was ready to sit down for dinner. However, the table was completely full, and there was no extra space. Her expression stiffened. "There's no space left. Ollie, you can grab some food and eat in the kitchen." The mother-in-law naturally ordered her around. Alice glanced at Leo. His eyes were downcast, as if he hadn't heard anything. In an instant, the image of him speaking for Sophia flashed in her mind. In her previous life, she always thought Leo was someone who accomplished great things, so he didn't sweat the small stuff. She just buried her grievances at home. But until this life, when Sophia moved in, she watched his tenderness and attentiveness towards Sophia, and only then did she realize it wasn't that he was careless. He just didn't care. He doesn't care whether she has been wronged, whether she has been bullied, or whether she has cried alone at night. "Mom, I'll bring a stool over. Just sitting in the corner will be fine," Alice said softly. "I eat alone in the kitchen," feeling cold and desolate. Before she could finish her sentence, she was interrupted by her mother-in-law. "Ollie, what do you mean by that? Are you saying in front of everyone that I've wronged you?" The mother-in-law slammed her chopsticks down, glaring at her with a frown. "You've been in the Chi family for 2 years, and you haven't even had a child. I haven't said anything to you, yet you still feel that I, as your mother-in-law, have treated you harshly?" The mother-in-law sighed heavily and said to Leo, "I truly regret it now. I should have made you wait 2 more years for Sophia." Alice's face turned bright red. Under the gaze of the entire family, her heart felt like it was being fried in hot oil. She recalled her past life. When her mother-in-law injured her foot, she took her bag and came to cook 3 meals a day for her, sleeping at the foot of the bed at night. When her mother-in-law coughed, she would get up to fetch the sputum bowl. She had trouble sleeping at night, and while working at the textile factory, she dozed off, fell, and broke her head, bleeding profusely, with 3 stitches on her head. She went to her mother-in-law's house to serve as usual. When her mother-in-law's fractured foot healed, she smiled and said to her, "You are truly a dutiful daughter-in-law. Leo marrying you is his blessing." For the few insipid compliments from her mother-in-law, and for Leo to give her a good face, Alice burned through her entire life like a candle. At that moment, listening to her mother-in-law's words, watching the indifferent Leo, and seeing the smug smile of Sophia beside him, Alice suddenly felt that her life was so worthless. She didn't argue anymore, picked up the bowl, took the chopsticks, sat in front of the kitchen stove, and finished her meal. After finishing, she put down the bowl and chopsticks, wiped her mouth, and left. In the evening, Leo came back. He pushed open the bedroom door with a strong sense of anger, pointed at her nose, and scolded her. "Today is Mom's birthday. You finished your meal and left without even saying a word. Is this how you behave as a daughter-in-law?" Sophia followed behind him and softly criticized, "Yeah, sister-in-law, how could you do this?" Alice was still holding her review book, working on a math problem. She was caught off guard by the sudden scolding and hadn't come to her senses yet. Leo suddenly snatched the book from her hands and threw it harshly into the corner. "What are you doing?" She was startled. The book was thrown apart, and the half-worn pages scattered all over the floor. Alice looked at Leo in disbelief, her heart filled with fear. What did he want to do? Did he want to hit her? "What good does it do to read these?" Leo said disdainfully, "With your brain, it's fine to do some sewing and work, but studying? You won't pass even after 10 years. Alice felt as if her heart was pierced by 1,000 arrows. It seemed as if something in her heart shattered all at once. She said nothing and crouched down to pick up the scattered papers. The next day, Alice moved out of the house. Chapter 8. In her previous life. After Alice had 2 children, she once moved out of the house after a quarrel with Leo over their parents' issues. She thought that, considering their years of marriage, Leo would be willing to come find her and give her a way out. She had it all planned in her mind. As long as Leo came to pick her up, or even just called the doorman downstairs, she would immediately grab her things and go back. And whatever he said, she would agree to. However, she waited for half a month, waiting until the children were on summer vacation, but still did not wait for Leo. Her colleagues' gazes became increasingly strange. She lacked the courage to stay, so she packed her things and returned home, feeling dejected, to continue serving her family. Alice could still recall the feeling she had when she lived in the dormitory. She was so anxious yet hopeful, her heart bitter and restless, and in the day-to-day stagnation, she slowly realized that Leo would never come to pick her up. But now, perhaps having been hurt too many times, she felt numb towards Leo. Now, what supports her in her heart is the desire to leave and the hope for a future life. She moved into the dormitory, saving the time spent commuting, and devoted all her time after work to reviewing her materials. Her colleagues sarcastically mocked her. "Oh, the captain's wife is different. Her family even supports her in taking the college entrance examination." Alice just smiled and did not respond to anyone's words. She came from the future and deeply understood the importance of the college entrance examination. The college entrance examination is currently the fairest opportunity to change one's destiny. As long as she gets into university, she will have a brand new life. Alice, calm and resilient, worked towards her goals. On the 7th day of her stay, a call from Leo came through the downstairs reception. Alice had just finished work and happened to receive the call. "Is something wrong?" she asked calmly. Leo seemed surprised that her response was so indifferent. He pondered for a moment and suppressed what he originally intended to say. On the phone, it was not a good time for conversation. "I have a business trip tomorrow and will be back in half a month." His voice was very calm and restrained. "You move back in first. And when I return from my business trip, we can have a good talk. Living in the dormitory is quite good for me." Before she could finish her sentence, she was interrupted by Leo. "Alice, don't forget, you are my wife," Leo said with anger in his voice. "You've been living in the dormitory. How do you expect others to see me? You're tarnishing my reputation." Alice didn't expect that this lifetime's Leo would actually start to care about the opinions and scrutiny of those around him. Perhaps it was because, in this life, she no longer blindly defended him. How could he and Sophia, a man and a woman living alone in the courtyard, not attract gossip? "I don't want to move," Alice firmly refused. On the other end of the line, Leo let out a mocking laugh. "Ollie, after all, we are a couple. If you want to throw a tantrum with me, there should be a limit." His voice was very soft, filled with a sense of threat. "If you don't move back, then you can forget about taking the college entrance examination." After he finished speaking, he hung up the phone directly. Alice was forced to move back to the family area courtyard. She knew that with Leo's capabilities, if he really wanted to stop her from taking the college entrance examination, it would be as easy as pie. She didn't dare to gamble her future and fate on his conscience. Fortunately, when she returned to live there, Leo was already on a business trip, and life was relatively peaceful. She participated in the college entrance examination after a hiatus of more than 10 years, becoming one of the 5.7 million candidates. After finishing the exam, she received the application form for her preferred universities. That form was placed in her drawer, with her name and other information filled in, but the section for her choices remained empty. Since her rebirth, she had wanted to distance herself from everything at that moment, to stay away from Leo, and not to repeat the life she had in her previous life. When this ticket for leaving was truly placed in her palm, she couldn't help but burst into tears. She dreamed for several nights in a row, dreaming of her previous life. What lingered in her dreams were the few tender moments she shared with Leo. When she gave birth to their child, he lowered his head, gently touched her face, and smiled at her tenderly. On a cold, deep night, he held an umbrella and came to the factory gate to pick her up, then went home with her. These fragmented trivialities constituted her persistence in that marriage. It was also that moment of tenderness that made her give up the university she was accepted into, relinquishing the chance to shape her own life. Alice started to run a low fever and couldn't sleep through the night. It was at this time that Leo returned from his business trip. These days, being able to travel out of the province is a rare thing. His business trip to Kyoto is a dream for many people in their lifetime. It was also Leo's first time in Kyoto, and he bought a gift for Sophia, a snow-white cashmere scarf. Sophia was like a cheerful little bird, clinging to his arm and asking questions about everything. And Alice appeared at the door, as if she were an uninvited guest interrupting their warmth. "Leo, I specifically reminded you to buy a gift for your sister-in-law. You didn't forget, did you?" Sophia smiled brightly as she spoke. Leo did not refute. Instead, he took out another white scarf from his luggage and handed it to Alice. Alice looked at the two identical white scarves and felt an unusual irony. In her previous life, she had heard a joke that said men were unwilling to put in the effort to buy gifts. So every time they gave gifts to their wives and mistresses, they were always the same, ensuring they wouldn't mix them up. Now, the scarf in front of her, identical to Alice's, deeply pierced her eyes. What exactly did she mean to Leo? Does this kind of marriage really have any meaning to continue? She did not take the scarf and turned back into the house. Behind her, Leo tightened his grip on the white scarf, a mocking curve at the corner of his lips. "Do you want love or not?" Chapter 9. That night, although there were 3 people in the house, Alice was all alone in the master bedroom. She slept restlessly, her low fever suddenly turning into a high fever, her head pounding, and her body alternating between chills and sweats. Her face was terrifyingly pale. She forced herself to get up, wanting to find 2 fever-reducing pills for herself. At that moment, Leo suddenly came out from the side, holding Sophia. In the dim night, Leo didn't even give her a glance, urgently saying, "Sophia caught a chill and has a bit of a fever. I'm taking her to the hospital." After saying that, he hurriedly left the house. Alice took the medicine and recalled the scene of the 2 of them embracing. Suddenly feeling a wave of nausea, she crouched on the ground, retching for a while, then weakly sat against the wall. In the depths of winter, she felt as if she were submerged in ice water, frozen to the core. In the days since Sophia moved in, the disappointment and pain in her heart, no matter how brutally described, felt light and insubstantial, lacking in authenticity. And now, it was time to bring everything to a conclusion. Not knowing how much time had passed, until the first light of dawn rose on the horizon, Alice wiped her tears and pushed herself up against the wall. She returned to the room, opened the drawer, and took out the college application form. She carefully filled in 3 preferred schools, located in Kyoto, which is 1,200 kilometers away from a city. The admission notices came in batches, and Sophia did quite well, receiving her acceptance letter from a city university. Leo celebrated her extensively, buying her plenty of luggage and clothes, and even gave her a large deposit slip as tuition and living expenses for school. Sophia, feeling proud, insisted on putting on a caring facade. "Leo, I won't celebrate too much. I just saw the rankings, and my sister-in-law didn't get accepted." Leo snorted coldly. "It's only natural that she didn't get in. There's no need to worry about her." Alice came home from work just in time to hear this remark. She returned to the bedroom without saying a word and then opened her bag. Inside the bag, a brand new admission notice read Capital First Normal University. The name written on the admission notice was another name. The name on her ID card had been changed before. When she was getting the marriage certificate, she had mentioned this to Leo. Unfortunately, he was absent-minded at the time and didn't care. Alice tugged at the corner of her lips, hid the admission notice, and began to prepare her belongings. That night, Leo knocked on her door. "The Sue family is throwing a graduation party for Sophia, and they want us to go together." From the perspective of outsiders, it was they, the couple, who took in Sophia, who had returned from the countryside, and provided her with a good learning environment. They were her great benefactors. But Alice did not want to go. "I have a headache, so I won't go." She mimicked his earlier cold tone. "You enjoy your drink." Leo hated seeing her in that lifeless state, and his expression immediately turned cold as well. If it weren't for the rumors already circulating outside, he wouldn't want to go out for a drink alone, as it would easily give others something to talk about. He didn't even want to say another word to Alice. "Let's talk after Sophia goes to school." He threw down the sentence and slammed the door. Moments later, the sound of the Jeep's engine came from outside. She knew that Leo was putting on a show for Sophia, so he specifically borrowed the car from work. The purpose was to tell the Sue family, those relatives who once drove Sophia away, that she was no longer the same. Alice stood by the window, watching the Jeep drive away, reminiscing about her newlywed days with him. At that time, during the third visit after marriage, she softly pleaded with him to borrow the Jeep, just to satisfy her little vanity. But what did he say? What he said was that public property cannot be used for private purposes. In front of her, he always had so many reasons and so many concerns, but when facing Sophia, he would be overwhelmed by so many uncontrollable feelings. Alice packed her luggage and placed it under the bed, then specially went to the Civil Affairs Bureau to get the divorce application form. She was accepted to a position 1,200 kilometers away. While he had to stay in a city for work, their divorce seemed only natural, without the need to consider public opinion and reputation. She thought to herself, if I could do it all over again, I would make this choice myself. Chapter 10. Leo was drunk that night. Sophia said she was worried about him and followed him home. The Jeep pulled up to the entrance of the family courtyard, and she helped him into the bedroom. Leo felt his waistband loosen, and a hot towel was pressed against him. He let out a sigh of exasperation. In the stillness of the night, a soft kiss landed on his lips. He held the warm and fragrant beauty in his arms and said, "Don't make trouble." In the morning, he opened his eyes to a splitting headache. Sophia lay in his arms, her slightly curled long hair giving her a charming allure. He was startled and quickly got up. Sophia was awakened by his movement and called out, "Leo?" Leo pinched the bridge of his nose and steadied himself. After a moment, he spoke, "Sophia, you should move back for a while." Sophia looked at him in shock. Leo turned his face away. "It's not the right time now." After he finished speaking, a look of sorrow appeared on Sophia's face. "Leo, are you worried about Alice?" Leo instinctively retorted, "Does she even deserve that?" Only then did Sophia let out a sigh of relief. She picked up the divorce application form she found last night, which was placed on the bedside, and handed it to Leo. "Leo, this is what she left on your bedside. You can take a look yourself." Leo was taken aback. He stared at the paper for a long time before finally taking it, only seeing divorce application form and the signature at the bottom. His heart felt as if something had gripped it tightly, making it hard for him to breathe. What does she mean by this? He coldly threw the divorce application form away. The light paper spun around and fell back in front of him. Leo couldn't tell what he felt at that moment. Was it panic or anger? He had never thought that something like divorce would happen between him and Alice. How many couples have spent their lives bickering and arguing? Alice loved him so much that even if he had some flings outside, she would never divorce him. "I will go find her." Leo suddenly got up, buttoning his shirt as he got out of bed. Sophia's voice called out from behind, but he couldn't pay attention at all. He felt an inexplicable anxiety in his heart and first went to Alice's maternal family. When she felt wronged, she would usually hide back at her maternal home to cry, so as not to be seen by outsiders and affect his reputation. However, both my father-in-law and mother-in-law said she hasn't come home. Leo had a meal at his in-laws' house and then hurriedly went to the textile factory where Alice worked. She could stay in the dormitory here, which served as another place for her to escape to when she was angry. Yet, he missed her once again. Leo searched for a whole day and night but couldn't find her. He eventually called in a messenger and mobilized the security department to go out and look for her. In the munitions factory, the security department is basically equivalent to the police station. The messenger looked at him in confusion. "Didn't your sister-in-law just leave yesterday morning? Why are you looking for the security department?" Leo was taken aback. Standing up abruptly, "What did you say?" "Sister-in-law got accepted into the Capital Normal University. I heard she left for the station early yesterday with her luggage." The tone of the communications soldier seemed inexplicable. "Everyone is saying, are you going to be reassigned after returning from your business trip? Otherwise, why would they let sister-in-law go so far for her studies?" Leo collapsed into the chair. His heart felt as if it had been struck by a thunderbolt. After the numbness came an endless wave of panic. He thought, she really is going to divorce him. Chapter 11. Leo tore the divorce application form into shreds. During the days after their marriage, he didn't truly cherish this relationship. Yet he never considered divorcing her. Even when Sophia returned to the city, he only regarded her as a distraction outside of his family. Never thinking of replacing Alice with her, Leo sat in the chair, trying to calm himself down as quickly as possible. He first found the messenger who had relayed the message earlier and asked him not to spread his family matters. The other party naturally kept silent. Meanwhile, the news of Alice being accepted into Capital Normal University slowly spread throughout the family courtyard. Leo received congratulations from many people. Your sister-in-law got into university. Aren't you going to celebrate? Yeah, she's going to Beijing for 4 years. Can you bear it? Even his boss heard about this happy event and specifically told him, supporting your spouse's education and progress is a great thing. After all, you are still young and not in a hurry to have children. In a few years, when she finishes university and comes back, she will definitely be assigned a good job. Faced with everyone's congratulations and teasing, Leo accepted it all, but the feelings inside him were quite complicated. After the college entrance examination was suspended for more than a decade, in the family courtyard, most people's spouses only had a middle school or vocational school education. Before this, Alice had finished high school and was considered quite educated in the family courtyard. Not to mention, she is now working hard to study and has been admitted to university. After finishing university, she would have better job placements, a brighter future, and more opportunities for development. How many people envied him for marrying such an impressive wife? The woman director who had previously acted as their matchmaker now finds her doorstep nearly worn out, with single men constantly asking for her help in matchmaking. However, in the quiet of the night, as she wipes away the facade of happiness from her face, recalling the divorce application she left behind, Leo feels a pang of bitterness in his heart. He couldn't help but start to blame her, even though he was somewhat indifferent to her on a daily basis. Isn't that just how men are? If she had any complaints, she should just voice them. He could also change for the sake of their marriage. It shouldn't be like this. Applying to the university in the capital without even discussing it with him, Leo dared not think about the things that had happened between him and Sophia. He firmly reminded himself that Alice must not have discovered everything. The divorce application she left behind was just a moment of anger. In the evening, he returned to the family courtyard. He took a shower in the bathroom and lay down on the bed. The yard was empty, and he felt uneasy. He took out his treasured wine from the cabinet and lit a cigarette. Just then, a shadowy figure walked in from outside. Leo's heart raced with excitement. The alcohol made his mind a bit hazy, and amidst the swirling smoke, he momentarily thought it was Alice. But in the next second, the burning cigarette butt touched his finger, and the sharp pain jolted him awake. Alice had already gone to Capital University and couldn't possibly come back at this time. He cooled his expression and looked at the doorway. In the next moment, Sophia pushed the door open, her face still beaming with a smile, gently calling out to him, Leo. Leo looked at her coldly, perhaps because there was no longer the wooden Alice to compare to. Seeing Sophia again at this moment, he found it hard to feel any pity or affection. Leo, why haven't you come to find me these days? Sophia sat at the head of the bed, twisting the cigarette butt from his fingertips and extinguishing it in the ashtray. Her eyes were filled with laughter, her tone gentle. I've been waiting for you all along. What are you waiting for me to do? Leo glanced at her and withdrew his hand from her grip. What relationship do we have? Why do you need to wait for me? Leo. Sophia was stunned. She thought that since Alice had submitted the divorce application and gone to Capital University, Leo would surely divorce her directly and then marry her. She had made up her mind. Now that she had been accepted into university, she would take the opportunity to regain the face she had lost in front of him. However, she waited at school for a week, and Leo didn't come to find her at all. Feeling a bit anxious and sensing that things were slipping out of her control, she took advantage of the night and went to the Chi family courtyard. What she didn't expect was that Leo would be so indifferent when she took the initiative to approach him, even less so than when they were having an affair at home with Alice. Your sister-in-law has gone out of town now. And there's no woman at home, so don't come to this yard anymore. Leo was somewhat impatient. His passionate eyes filled with indifference. You need to be mindful of the impact. What do you mean? Sophia exclaimed in disbelief. Mindful of the impact? When Alice was at home and you were lying beside me. How come you didn't think about the impact? Leo's expression turned cold, and he shot her a warning glance. Sophia realized she had misspoken. She didn't dare to truly offend Leo. Her eyes reddened, and she began to play the victim. Leo, you clearly promised me that you would marry me. You said that in your heart. There would only ever be me. That was 6 years ago. Leo's expression was cold. After I got married, I never said I would marry you. Sophia took a step back, tears streaming down her face. Leo, I gave you everything. How could you treat me like this? She looked like someone who had been abandoned and was utterly heartbroken. This sight made Leo feel extremely impatient. No man likes to be entangled with a woman who has grown tiresome. Let alone, this woman is a withered flower. A surge of malice suddenly rose in his heart as he tilted Sophia's chin, asking word by word, how many men have you said this to? What do you mean? Sophia's lips trembled. Leo's slanted brows lifted slightly, appearing cold and unfeeling. Do you think I don't know? After these years in the countryside, are you still a pure and innocent girl? Chapter 12. Sophia's face instantly lost all color. Her eyes were filled with panic and shock, as if she couldn't believe that the man who had always been gentle and generous in front of her would actually say such things to her. She thought that Leo was still the neighbor boy who had promised to marry her before she went to the countryside. She thought that all these years, Leo had been sending her money and had not discovered the things that happened between her and the village chief's son while she was in the countryside. She thought that as long as she returned to the city, everything from the past would vanish, and everything would start anew. But Leo's words were like a sharp knife, stabbing into her heart. She began to feel anxious and panicked. How did he know? How much did he know? When did he find out? Leo, what are you talking about? I was clearly with you that night. So, that lover of yours in the countryside. If I hadn't had someone stop him, he would have come to your school. Leo scoffed, his charming peach blossom eyes filled with mockery. If you don't believe me, should I have someone find him again? Sophia dared not speak anymore. She looked at Leo, her eyes glistening with tears. In the past, when Leo saw her like this, he would have already held her in his arms, gently comforting her. But at this moment, Leo just looked at her coldly. If you have nothing else to do, then come to me less often in the future. Leo's voice was indifferent. Sophia bit her lip. Her heart was wrapped in deep anxiety and disappointment, and she cried out in front of Leo, Leo, I can't help it. She sobbed. He is a local tyrant, and I am just a weak woman. If he insists, what can I do? The countryside is really too harsh. In just a few words, she shifted all the blame onto that Mistress Lu Baojen, as if it were entirely the other person's fault. But the reality was that after a few days of hardship in the countryside, Sophia could no longer endure it. At that time, she didn't know she would be able to return home in the future, and she was calculating that she might be trapped in that mountain valley for the rest of her life. Sophia was a resourceful person. No matter the situation, she would find a way to make her life comfortable. So, she quickly set her sights on Lu Baojen. He was the son of the village chief, had decent living conditions in the countryside, was tall, and had considerable strength. Every month, most of her work was done by that man, with the work points credited to her. Meanwhile, Leo also sent her money through someone every month. In front of Leo, she never mentioned anything about the countryside, only pretending to be pitiful to gain benefits. In front of Lu Baojen, she also never mentioned Leo, only saying that the money was sent by her family because they were worried she wasn't doing well. For a long time, Sophia lived quite comfortably, especially at the village chief's house. Seeing that her family sent her a large sum of money every month, they thought her family conditions were quite good and tried every means to please her, fearing that the city daughter-in-law would be unhappy. Now, in front of Leo, she concealed all these little thoughts. She cried incessantly, lamenting her helplessness in going to the countryside and the harshness of rural life. Leo, I really have no choice. You don't understand. Once I go to the countryside, I have to farm, to plow the fields, afraid of exhausting the ox, and the plow has to be pulled by people. At night, while sleeping, in summer there are mosquitoes biting, and in winter there are no blankets to cover me. I have been weak since childhood. How can I endure this? Sophia's lament made Leo barely have a bit of patience, but he didn't completely believe Sophia's words. The fact that Leo could achieve this level at such a young age shows that he is not a fool. The bond between him and Sophia ultimately stems from a bit of youthful affection, combined with the thrill outside of marriage, which makes it seem particularly deep. Now, with Alice gone, the delicate balance among the three has been instantly shattered. Leo's inner desire for excitement has diminished, and his mind has become much clearer. Chapter 13. Leo's heart grew cold as he said to Sophia, "Sophia, I will not inquire about those matters in the countryside, no matter how they happened or how they ended, nor will I speak of them. In the past, there were no outrageous rumors between Sophia and Leo because Alice lived at home and had not said anything outside. But now, Alice has gone to Kyoto for her studies, and Sophia has also been accepted into university. The situation is completely different. He is a young married man living in the courtyard, and a female university student occasionally sneaks into his home. Would he still be able to maintain his reputation?" Sophia listened to his words, thinking he had softened due to her tears, unable to suppress a smile that wanted to rise at the corners of her lips. But the next second, Leo's words sent her plummeting into despair. "But don't come looking for me again in the future." Leo spoke clearly and deliberately. "You have now been accepted into university, and it won't be difficult for you to find a good man in the city. So don't entangle yourself with me anymore, Leo. But my heart only belongs to you." As soon as she finished speaking, Leo waved his hand. His tone carried a hint of impatience. "Don't say such things anymore in the future. If he truly was the only one, how could she be with other men in the countryside?" He stood up, grabbed Sophia's wrist, and pushed her out. Sophia dared not anger him, nor could she make a scene. She could only walk out in the rain, silently. As she walked, tears fell. Her heart was filled with hatred for Alice. She silently thought to herself, Leo values Alice more than her, simply because Alice was a pure and untouched bride when she married him. But what if, while studying in Kyoto, Alice had another man? Can Leo really swallow this anger? Leo stood under the misty rain, watching Sophia's departing figure. This suddenly reminded him of that rainy night in winter. That night, he excitedly went to pick up Sophia from night school, soaking half of his shoulder. That night, the rain was particularly heavy and cold. On the way home, he just wanted to quickly have some hot water to wash up. So, as soon as he entered the room, he asked Alice to boil some water for him. Looking back now, it seems that Alice was also on the night shift that day. Her hair was wet, probably from getting caught in the rain on her way back. But she didn't complain at all, even knowing that he went to pick up Sophia. She never got angry with him, just silently brought him hot water. Alice has always been like this. Since the beginning of their marriage, she never complained, never said she was tired, and certainly never acted spoiled. She just worked diligently, dedicating her heart entirely to him. It was Sophia's arrival that broke the original tranquility. Leo thought to himself that since he had already driven Sophia away, Alice should be able to calm down as well. University only lasts for a short 4 years, plus winter and summer breaks. Graduation assignments generally follow the principle of allocation based on household registration location. By the time she finishes university and returns to a city, she will surely be assigned a very good job. At that time, they would still be the same, living a good life together. This time, he would treat her a little better. Leo's thoughts were beautiful. As he entered dreamland, the corners of his lips carried a faint smile. He never considered for a moment that Alice had gone 1,200 kilometers away just to completely sever ties with him. Chapter 14. On the day she left the divorce application form, at 10 in the morning, Alice boarded the train leaving a city. Everything about a city, including Leo and Sophia, was cast aside in her mind. She only wanted to embrace the brand new life she had fought so hard to obtain. In this era, transportation was far less convenient than in later times. It took 2 days and 2 nights by train to get from a city to the capital. Alice carried money and tickets, all kept in her close-fitting clothes. In addition, she also brought 6 steamed buns and 5 eggs. Her carry-on luggage was packed in a snakeskin bag. The platform was filled with people coming to see others off. Some were sending off family and friends, while many were bidding farewell to departing students. Some people looked sorrowful, while others were filled with hope. Alice squeezed onto the train with the crowd, holding her snakeskin bag, and sat down on the hard seat, feeling neither sad nor happy. To leave a city smoothly, she hadn't informed anyone to come and see her off. To her surprise, just as she found her seat and looked up, Alice saw a familiar face. David was wearing a simple gray cotton coat and carrying a large snakeskin bag. And he looked over at her. "Ollie, it's such a coincidence," he smiled, revealing 2 rows of big white teeth, putting down the snakeskin bag, his face full of joy at meeting an acquaintance. "Yeah, what a coincidence." Alice quickly scooted a bit further inside. The 2 sat in a row, with their luggage at their feet, and started chatting. "Where are you going?" David asked. "To Kyoto." "Great. I'm also going to Kyoto." After chatting for a while, they found out that both were going to Kyoto for school. Alice was going to Capital Normal University, while David was going to Tsinghua University. "Is that Ruan-mei on the admission list, right?" David said. "When I saw it at the time, I was wondering if it was you. I changed my name. It was originally Mei from the word for plum blossom, but later I changed it to Mu Wen-mei," Alice explained. "So that's how it is." David smiled. The 2 chatted for a while and informed each other about their majors. David is majoring in architecture at Tsinghua University. He has a good eye. In recent years, fields related to literature, history, and philosophy have become more popular. But if you wait a few years, all majors related to infrastructure will become very popular. After chatting for a while, time slowly moved towards noon. Alice took out her own provisions, steamed buns paired with pickled vegetables. Although there were some grants for attending university, Alice still adhered to the principle of saving wherever possible, bringing enough food for 2 days. David pointed to a spot not far away. "Did you bring a cup? You can get some hot water. That way, you won't choke on the steamed buns." Alice rarely had the opportunity to travel far in her previous life. Leo traveled for business when he was young, and in his old age, he followed official tour groups to explore much of his homeland and witness the world's splendid scenery. But she has always been the one waiting at home. She packed Leo's luggage countless times, only to be met with his complaints, "You're bringing too much stuff. Do you think we're moving?" But only now does she realize that there is hot water available on the train. From her snakeskin bag, she pulled out an enamel mug with a small chip, on which was written "Labor is most glorious." "Can you help me watch the luggage? I'll go get some water." Alice stood up, thought for a moment, and asked David, "Do you want hot water?" "I'll go. You take care of the luggage." David had her sit down and took the enamel cup from her hands. After a moment, he returned steadily holding 2 cups of water. The 2 of them made do with a simple lunch. Alice kept looking out the window at these utterly ordinary scenes, which she had never witnessed in her previous life. The fatigue of her body and the excitement of her mind left Alice no time to think about everything related to a city. However, David was unaware of this. He casually brought up, "You got into university. Why are you going to the capital alone? Why isn't your partner accompanying you?" Chapter 15. Alice's marriage is something that many people know about. Everyone knows she married well. Her husband has a high position and good benefits. To outsiders, Alice seems to live a glamorous life, without a care in the world. As for the inner struggles, they are not worth mentioning to outsiders. Alice's expression darkened. Just thinking of Leo made her feel as if a lump of cotton was blocking her chest, making it hard to breathe. David looked at her hesitantly, feeling that he had asked something he shouldn't have, and silently scolded himself. "It's none of your business what happens between couples. What a waste of time." Alice looked out the window at the rapidly retreating mountains and let out a heavy sigh. After all, he was the man she had deeply loved. How could she simply forget him? Yet, she was beginning to understand more and more. In her life, Leo was like an unburst abscess. To squeeze out the immature abscess at this moment would naturally be excruciating. However, if the abscess is not squeezed, it will remain buried in her body for a lifetime, slowly festering, corroding her flesh, and devouring her life. This time, Alice has made up her mind to dig out this wound as soon as possible. Now, facing David's inquiry, she no longer concealed the truth. On the contrary, she took a deep breath and said to David, "I am going to divorce him, so I don't need him to send me." After saying that, she looked at David, her heart pounding. In this life and the next, this was the first time she had said in front of someone that she wanted to divorce Leo. For her, it felt like she had expelled a breath of stagnant air from her heart. She waited for David's reaction, even speculating whether he would be as shocked as those well-meaning friends and family, and then start trying to persuade her not to get divorced. For people these days, divorce is a significant matter, just like in her previous life. As long as two people can get through their conflicts, they would definitely not divorce. Once divorce is on the table, parents, relatives, and leaders become layers of resistance. However, David did not. During the journey that followed, his words became fewer. Although he would occasionally look at her with a curious gaze, he no longer asked many questions. Alice also breathed a sigh of relief. The two only chatted about college entrance examinations and study-related matters, helping to keep an eye on each other's bags while the other was sleeping, or getting hot water and the like. The 2-day and 2-night journey left both of them feeling sore all over. After much effort, they finally arrived at their destination, where both universities sent teachers and senior students to greet them. David and Alice, each carrying their own snakeskin bags, parted ways. Alice found the teacher from the Capital Normal University's orientation office, but she couldn't leave just yet. She arrived at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and the school-arranged vehicle couldn't depart until it was full. To conserve resources, they waited until after 6 in the evening, finally loading a full bus of people into the university campus. Alice inexplicably recalled her previous life, where Leo had spoken to her about the splendor of the capital's academic institutions. He said at the time, "It's a pity that Sophia's college entrance examination scores weren't enough. Otherwise, she could have gotten into the capital. A city is nice, but it can't compare to the capital." Now, the one who got into Capital Normal University is not the Sophia he has been talking about for a lifetime, but her, Alice. Alice feels a pent-up frustration in her heart slowly dissipating. Since her rebirth, the resentment she had suppressed and the deep-seated bitterness have gradually faded as she stepped into the university gates. Chapter 16. Upon entering the school, the first arrangement was the dormitory. Alice was assigned to a 4-person room in an old dormitory building. She climbed 6 flights of stairs with the snakeskin bag, panting as she entered the dormitory. By the time she arrived, the other 3 students had already gotten there. Alice greeted a few people with a smile and then began to arrange her bedding. After a hiatus of more than 10 years, they were the first cohort to enter campus through the college entrance examination, and there was a significant age difference among everyone. Thus, at 22 years old, Alice was considered to be of average age here. After being assigned to the dormitory, the 4 of them had dinner together that night. At the dinner table, everyone shared a bit about their backgrounds. Chin Ping is the oldest in the dormitory, and she speaks cheerfully. "It wasn't easy for me to attend university. My mother-in-law insists that since I went to university, I've climbed to a higher branch and won't go back to live with my husband anymore. But I made sure to get my parents and my boss to guarantee it several times before I came to study." Younger Luna chimed in, "We can't be the kind of women who abandon their husbands after getting an education. Studying is for gaining knowledge and building our country, not just for living a good life for ourselves." Alice watched the 2 of them exchanging words, feeling a heaviness in her heart. She was afraid of causing unnecessary turmoil, so she did not reveal her marriage to Leo. Time flowed quietly like this. In the blink of an eye, Alice had already been attending classes at school for half a month. She felt that going to university was truly an incredibly happy thing. Every day, she didn't have to work in the factory, didn't have to tend to the small piece of land at home, pots and pans, or the stove. She could swim freely in the ocean of knowledge, wholeheartedly studying and looking forward to a better future. She thought that this peaceful life would continue until late spring and early summer in April. when she passed by the dormitory building and was called to stop by the dormitory manager. "Are you Alice?" Alice paused slowly and replied, "Yes, it's me. Is there something you need? Come down at 8 o'clock tonight. There's a call for you." In this day and age, no one has a personal phone. To contact someone, you could only call their workplace or school, agree on a time to receive the call, and then that person would wait by the phone at the appointed time. Alice had not given the phone number at the university dormitory building to anyone. "Auntie, did the caller say who he was?" Alice asked. For some reason, she had a very bad premonition, as if something she did not want to see was about to happen. "He said his surname is Chi, and he is your lover." Alice was stunned in place. Before leaving a city, she left Leo a divorce application form. Of course, this does not mean that with this divorce application, she can dissolve her marriage with Leo. She and Leo were introduced through the organization, underwent background checks, and received approval to marry, let alone in this era. Even decades later, for a group-level cadre to get a divorce is a significant matter for the individual. The military especially emphasizes the stability, harmony, and unity of families, unless it is an unavoidable major issue. Hastily getting a divorce faces considerable resistance. Alice originally planned to take the exam for a capital city located 1,200 kilometers away, and after graduation, she wanted to find a way to stay in the capital. In this day and age, with inconvenient communication and transportation, and over 1,000 kilometers apart, it was difficult for them to reunite, especially since they had no children and could not easily transfer jobs. After the divorce, remarrying each other was a good choice for both of them. Alice's mind was a chaotic mess of thoughts as she ate her dinner without tasting it, and around 8 o'clock, she waited by the telephone at the dormitory building. The wall clock in the hall just struck 8, and the phone immediately rang. Alice looked at the ringing telephone, feeling no joy in her heart. On the contrary, she wished she could just hang up the phone. Chapter 17. After hesitating for a moment, Alice picked up the phone. "Hello? It's me." The male voice on the other end was slightly hoarse and sounded very restrained. Alice's heart sank. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Only the sound of quiet breathing came through the receiver. After a long pause, it was Leo who spoke first. "You got into university and didn't even tell me in person. I couldn't even see you off." Alice tugged at the corner of her lips. "No need. Didn't you take Sophia instead?" On Sophia's first day of enrollment, he specially borrowed a jeep to take her to school. This was to tell everyone, Sophia is being protected by someone. But he had never shown her such thoughtfulness. Leo's voice was soft. "If I had known you got into university, of course I would have taken you." Alice shivered. Once, she had longed for Leo to treat her a little better, a little more specially. But as time passed and she saw a broader world, the warmth Leo displayed now felt strange and unfamiliar to her. With a hint of confusion in her tone, she asked him, "Did you see the divorce application I left for you?" This sentence instantly shattered the moment of warmth from the phone. Leo hadn't spoken for a long time, long enough that Alice almost wanted to ask, "Is the signal bad?" But the next second, he spoke. He said, "I didn't." Alice was taken aback for a moment. She thought to herself, how could he not have it? It was clearly on the desk, and she had even pressed it down with a cup to prevent it from being blown away by the wind. How could Leo not have received it? But the next second, she realized, "You're lying." Alice exposed his lie. "If you didn't receive it, your reaction shouldn't be like this." If he hadn't seen the divorce application at all, then during the past half-month when she left without saying goodbye, he should have reported her missing long ago and should have called her by now. Instead of doing it like this now, after more than half a month, he hesitantly made this phone call to her, pretending to be oblivious and denying that he had seen the divorce application form. "Ollie, in my heart, I just pretend I never received it." Leo softened his voice. "I shouldn't have not supported you in the college entrance examination. It's understandable that you're angry, but it's been over half a month now. Haven't you calmed down yet?" Leo's words made Alice frown. In a previous life, he was like this too. Clearly, he was the one who made the mistake. Yet he wouldn't directly apologize for it. Instead, he would find another trivial matter to downplay. trying to cover up his own error. Just like now, he refused to mention Sophia, unwilling to confront the real reason she brought up the divorce, sidestepping the issue and using not supporting her college entrance examination as a pretext, trying to give her an out. Leo, do you really not have any idea about the reason I want to divorce you? Her words caused the man on the other end of the phone to suddenly stop breathing. Leo's face darkened, and the suspicions he had harbored all along finally became reality, filling him with regret. Alice's words made him realize that she had seen through his affair with Sophia. That's why she was determined to divorce him. However, Leo was naturally unwilling. On the contrary, it was only when Alice proposed the divorce and was truly about to leave him that he realized there had always been a place for her in his heart. Even after receiving that divorce application form, even though she was so resolute about leaving him, he still held on to a glimmer of hope, thinking only of how to coax her back. Ollie, don't say that. Leo's voice softened further. Don't be impulsive. In my heart, there has never been anyone else. Alice tugged at the corner of her lips, her smile laced with deep sarcasm. If it weren't for experiencing the previous life, for witnessing with my own eyes the bundle of green silk he hid in the box after his death, for seeing the love letters he kept, and for personally witnessing the decades-long correspondence and longing between him and Sophia, perhaps she would have believed Leo's nonsense. But at this moment, Alice has gone through all of this. She has endured all the pain and torment, disappointment and heartbreak. At this moment, her heart, tempered through countless trials, is unwavering. She gripped the receiver so tightly that her fingers turned white, yet still spoke each word with utmost clarity. Leo, I want a divorce. And I mean it. If you think it's too abrupt to get the divorce certificate now and it will affect you, we can wait until after my graduation to do it. By then, I will find a way to stay in the capital. There are 1,200 kilometers between us. Using this reason to divorce is decent for both of us. After saying that, she hung up the phone, not wanting to hear any more of his voice. Chapter 18. After receiving this call, Alice felt restless for several days. During class, her right eyelid kept twitching. She closed her eyes, always feeling that something bad was about to happen. Time flies quickly. In the blink of an eye, it was Saturday. Alice's weekend was somewhat busy. To supplement her living expenses, she bought a second-hand bicycle and rode 5 kilometers every day to the factory residential area to tutor a middle school student in math. That day, after finishing her class and returning to school, she first went to the cafeteria for dinner, carrying a few apples she had just bought. She slowly walked towards the dormitory building. As she walked, upon reaching the bottom of the dormitory building, she saw a figure standing not far away, her expression gradually becoming serious, and her steps hesitating. That person also saw her and walked over with long strides. Ollie. Leo was dressed in casual clothes, a white shirt and gray trousers, his well-exercised physique upright as he quickly approached her. In this appearance, he had once captivated her in her previous life. But at this moment, when she saw him, she completely lost that fluttering feeling. She looked at Leo as if he were a big trouble. What are you doing here? She looked at him coldly, her tone devoid of any joy, extremely indifferent. In Leo's heart, it felt as if he had been pricked by a fine needle, and a drop of bright red blood emerged. Except for that day on the phone, he had never received such cold treatment from Alice. He thought that even if she was angry, seeing him travel thousands of miles to the capital to see her would surely touch her deeply. But Alice remained so indifferent. Leo even felt that she wasn't happy at all about his arrival. She clearly didn't want to see him. I'm here to see you. Leo carefully examined the woman in front of him. In early May, the weather in the capital had just warmed up. Alice was wearing a long-sleeved white shirt, a blue checkered skirt, and her 2 braided pigtails were glossy and black. Just now, she walked down the tree-lined path of the campus, slowly approaching from a distance, like an exquisite painting of a beautiful woman. Leo felt deep regret. Previously, he seemed to have always overlooked such beauty. In his heart, the image of her with braided hair walking on campus had always belonged to Sophia, while Alice was the quiet one, busy with pots and pans, working in the factory. But now, Sophia's figure has faded. In its place is his wife before him. Leo. Am I not clear enough on the phone? Alice frowned, her expression filled with anger as she shot Leo a dissatisfied glare. Leo willingly accepted it. He even felt that Alice, who was glaring at him at that moment, looked incredibly proud and beautiful, full of life. Ollie, I feel that there must be some misunderstandings between us that haven't been resolved. Leo stepped forward, gripping her wrist and pulling her closer to him. Is your relationship with Sophia really just my misunderstanding? Alice forcefully shook off his hand. Leo's expression darkened. He took a deep breath and looked up at her. I never thought of having her replace you. I also didn't expect you to be so hurt by this. Alice shook her head, her tone laced with sarcasm. Leo, don't you find it ridiculous to say that? If I were with another man. Before she could finish her sentence, Leo interrupted her. He pressed down on her shoulder with one hand, his gaze intense. I won't allow it. Chapter 19. Alice shivered slightly. In her previous life, she never dared to stand up to Leo. In their interactions, she had always been the one who followed the arrangements. But now, she took a deep breath and shook off Leo's hand. I've already said, I want a divorce from you. She bit her lip and said, also, please don't pull me around at school. It's not good if others see. Leo's expression darkened. He realized her determination to leave him. It was only at this moment that he understood how heavy that divorce application form was. Alice was no longer the woman who worked at the textile factory in a city. She has now been accepted into university, starting a brand new chapter in her life. How precious university students are nowadays. After graduation, there might really be a chance to work in the capital. The little sparrow that once was has now grown tender wings, ready to soar into the sky. A feeling of losing control suddenly filled Leo's heart. He stared at Alice and suddenly said, if I don't agree, your divorce application will absolutely not be approved. Alice was taken aback. The country protects military marriages, although it is not yet written directly into law as it is in later times. It is indeed very difficult for military spouses to unilaterally file for divorce. She opened her mouth and threatened him, if you don't agree, I'll report your affair with Sophia. In her heart, she didn't really want to do that. She knew the impact of public opinion these days and didn't want to have a bitter fallout with Leo. But Leo seemed indifferent. He tugged at the corner of his lips. Ollie, do you have any evidence? Alice was taken aback. If you don't have evidence, then of course I can deny it. Leo's expression was calm. If you hadn't gotten into university, you could have gone all out to sue me, and maybe someone would actually believe you. But now, you've gotten into university, and you're about to divorce me. Leo smirked and said, guess what? Those people outside will either believe I cheated or think that you are trying to climb the social ladder after getting into university. Alice was so angry that her face turned red. Leo, have you no shame? Leo lowered his eyes. His slightly dark complexion also flushed from her scolding. In this lifetime, he had never thought that one day he would have to use such despicable means to keep a woman, only to be scolded by her. Ollie, keep your voice down. He pressed her shoulder and whispered a threat. This is right below your dormitory building. Causing a scene here won't be good for you. Alice took a deep breath, her lips trembling slightly. She had to clench her fists to maintain her composure. Leo, how can you be so shameless? It was clearly not her fault. It was Leo who cheated. He betrayed the marriage, yet he could still shamelessly turn the tables. Alice's eyes were red, wishing she could just bite him. Leo was silent for a moment, then suddenly smirked, his gaze wicked. I'm shameless? He enunciated each word, filled with resentment, and retorted, Alice, if you hadn't gotten into university, would you still divorce me over my affair with Sophia? Alice was taken aback by his question. Her lips trembled, and she looked up to slap Leo across the face. Don't assume everyone is as filthy as you are. Leo's cheek turned red, watching her run away quickly. He had never been humiliated by words like this. Even though he felt guilty, his heart was filled with anger. Alice's wings had grown strong. After getting into university, she seemed to have completely transformed. He rushed back to the guest house in a fit of anger, and the guilt he felt was considerably diminished by Alice's recent rejection and coldness. Sitting at the head of the bed, he lit a cigarette, and for some reason, the thought of divorce unexpectedly surfaced in his mind. Chapter 20. Alice ran back to the dormitory, directly throwing herself onto the bed and pulling the curtains shut. She buried her face in the pillow, her heart swelling with an indescribable sense of grievance and bitterness. In her relationship with Leo, she had once given her all, but now, after finally getting a second chance, she had the opportunity to change. Yet she still had to face Leo, that bastard, turning things against her. Unfortunately, the events of her previous life were known only to her. She couldn't even confide in anyone about everything that was happening to her. She lay on the pillow, tears slowly streaming out. Before long, the pillow was soaked in a large patch. She couldn't help but think, if Leo really insisted on not getting a divorce and even turned the tables on her, what could she do? The entire night, Alice was preoccupied with these thoughts and couldn't sleep well. The next morning, when she left the dormitory for class, the dormitory manager called out to her again. Alice, your partner left you a note. Come over and get it. Alice felt disgusted, as if she had swallowed a fly. Upon hearing the term lover, reluctantly, she took the envelope handed to her by the dormitory supervisor, as if she were looking at a big trouble. After a moment, she bit her lip and opened the envelope. 6:30 p.m. Beef restaurant at the north gate of the school. Let's have dinner together. After reading the content, Alice let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Leo didn't write anything messy in the letter. In today's world, the public opinion environment is too important. She didn't want to become a topic of gossip just a month after starting school. In the evening, Alice finished her class and immediately ran towards the north gate of the school. The beef restaurant is a nice place near the north gate of the school. And unlike ordinary restaurants, this one has private booths. The booths are screened off, so when two people talk, they won't be seen by others. Alice held her books and followed the waiter into the innermost booth. Leo was still wearing that black short trench coat, sitting on a chair with a hint of inexplicable melancholy in his expression. He had dark circles under his eyes, and his lips were very dry, looking as if he hadn't slept all night. Alice glanced at him and sat down in the seat opposite him. Almost as soon as Alice sat down, the hot pot was served. Leo seemed extremely hungry, not saying a word to her, just eating. So, Alice also remained silent, just watching him eat. After a while, Leo suddenly spoke up. Do you remember? The first time we met for blind date. We ate at a beef restaurant. Alice immediately recalled it. At that time, the organization introduced Leo to her for the blind date. At that time, Leo was 28 years old, handsome, tall, and held a high position. Although he was a bit older, his conditions were indeed good, making him a coveted bachelor in the arms factory. She came from a working-class background, attended high school, was young and beautiful, and was arranged to meet him to solve the marriage issues of older single men. When they first met, Leo invited her to eat beef hot pot. Why aren't you eating? Leo picked up a piece of beef for her with chopsticks. You wouldn't really refuse to share a meal with me, would you? Alice looked at the thick, juicy piece of beef in the bowl, which appeared very tender and delicious. She held the chopsticks in her hand, but her heart felt as if a huge stone had dropped into it. After a while, facing Leo's inexplicable gaze, she put down her chopsticks. Leo, I'm allergic to beef. Every time I eat it, I break out in a lot of small rashes. She pressed her lips together, her expression seeming to look through him, as if she were watching someone else. She picked the beef from her bowl and returned it to him, her tone very light, as if she didn't care whether he could hear her or not. She said, I've told you many times, but you never remember. Chapter 21. Alice and Leo's marriage was like the countless times they had eaten beef hot pot in their previous life. To outsiders, it seemed that Leo was generous, taking her out to eat meat during a time when meat was strictly rationed. But for Alice, he could never remember that she was allergic to beef. Every time they went out to eat, she accompanied him in eating beef, and afterward, her waist would break out in a rash that itched for many days. On the outside, it looked glamorous, but on the inside, it was all discomfort. This was the essence of their marriage. Leo put down his chopsticks, seemingly at a loss. Alice sighed. When you like someone, It really shows in every little action. Alice's expression was filled with sadness. Do you remember that Sophia liked red checkered fabric? That she loved to eat millefeuille pastries? That she liked to tie her hair with bubble gauze hair ties? And that I had prepared all these for her before she went to the city? But you can't remember. I don't eat beef. It felt as if a storm had descended upon Alice's heart. The rain seemed to want to spill out through her eyes. She forced herself to look up, sniffed, and turned to Leo. You don't really like me. So why must we torment each other? Leo didn't know why, but seeing her desperately holding back tears, looking at him with a pleading expression, made him feel particularly sad. He felt as if he had lost something extremely important in his life. It was as if there was a soft spot in his heart that was being completely dug out by someone. The anger and unwillingness he felt when he first received the divorce application form seemed to be washed away by her tears at that moment. He wanted to tell her, the things between Sophia and me are in the past. What I liked was just a memory. He wanted to tell her, I'm sorry. It seems that only now do I truly understand my own heart. He longed to hold her in his arms and ask her for another chance. In these 2 years of marriage, he has many shortcomings, but he truly wants to change and make amends. This time, he is not putting on a show, nor is he being insincere. He is genuine. However, seeing Alice trying so hard to be strong, he feels that everything is in vain. I'm sorry. He apologized to her. This time, the apology was sincere. Alice shook her head. It's all in the past, she said. The two remained silent for a long time, with only the beef hot pot bubbling away. The mist spread in the compartment until the pot was nearly dry. Don't waste it. Hurry up and eat. Alice poured the remaining beef into the pot and served it to Leo. Placing it in his bowl, Leo continued to eat heartily. However, this time the beef seemed to have absorbed too much salt from the soup, making it salty and bitter. He said nothing and finished eating in large bites. When you graduate, we will get the divorce certificate. Leo put down his chopsticks and said softly. Alice was taken aback for a moment, then nodded cheerfully. After leaving the beef restaurant, one of them headed south while the other headed north. Alice did not look back. Therefore, she did not see Leo standing under the streetlight, lingering for a long time until her silhouette disappeared into the night. For the next 4 years, the two lived in peace. In her sophomore year, during the new year, Alice accompanied Leo to the Chi family for the New Year's Eve dinner. The two pretended to be at peace with each other. But this time, when his mother urged him to have children, Leo chose to defend Alice. Mom, she is still studying. There's no rush for kids. Alice lowered her head and said nothing. Once, she longed for Leo's support and affirmation. Now she has truly received it. But unfortunately, it came too late. In the next 2 years, her time back in a city became less and less, and their connection grew increasingly faint, until a new correspondent arrived beside Leo, who initially didn't know that their leader was married. Time passed in a blur, and it was time for Alice to graduate. Chapter 22. Alice's cohort was the first group of university graduates after the restoration of the college entrance examination. Alice hoped to stay in the capital for work, and as graduation approached, she wished to receive a job notification from the relevant organization. Unfortunately, at this time, the capital has an astonishing number of talented individuals, especially with the return of educated youth to the city, and their children wanting to stay in the capital, along with many recent graduates from various universities. Alice did not receive any notifications. According to the current allocation policy, if she wants to enter the system, she can only choose to return to a city. Alice was so troubled by the graduation allocation issue that she couldn't sleep, and later even considered refusing the allocation to work southbound on her own. With the advancement of reform and opening up, foreign investment continued to pour in, and English, as a language, gradually replaced Russian, becoming the most sought-after foreign language major in the business market. Alice was preparing to buy a southbound train ticket to Xiangshan. However, just at that moment, she suddenly received a call from a city. On the phone, her mother's voice sounded a bit aged. Ollie, if you have graduated, you should come back. Your father fell while working at the factory a few days ago, hit his head, and bled a lot. He is on the operating table. calling your name, worried that you are not doing well alone out there. Mom and Dad don't expect you to achieve great success. We just hope that once you graduate, you can find a job and live well. After hanging up the phone, Alice couldn't sleep all night. Over the past few years, her parents have learned about the breakdown of her marriage with Leo, but they have been dragging their feet and haven't filed for divorce yet. Her parents are deeply worried about her, fearing that if she goes south alone, she might be deceived and bullied. After much hesitation, her desire to go south could not outweigh her feelings for her parents. Her parents are aging day by day. If she really goes south, it is uncertain how many more times they will meet in the future. In the end, she decided to accept the job assignment after graduation and return to a city to teach. Currently, the allocation policy is that universities teach high school, vocational schools teach middle school, and technical schools teach elementary school. Alice graduated from a top normal university in the country and was assigned to teach at the best high school in a city. One high school. She graduated in June, and since high school had not yet started, she had a long period of rest and adjustment. She thought that it would be a good time to go with Leo to pick up the divorce certificate. So, after returning to a city, she rented a place near a one high school and then called Leo. "I'm back in a city. Are you free tomorrow? Let's meet." On the phone, fearing that the operator might be eavesdropping, Alice didn't say much, only telling Leo the meeting place. The next afternoon, Alice arrived early at the tea house to wait. For years into the reform and opening up, a city had undergone earth-shattering changes. Various small shops had opened on the streets, and people's clothing had transformed from the common black, gray, blue, and green to more vibrant and colorful hues. Alice wore a Shaoqing shirt that had become popular since last year's Spring Festival gala, making her skin appear as white as snow. Leo was still dressed in a casual black trench coat, and his features had become more mature and composed. His rank has also been elevated by half a level, becoming an official regiment-level cadre. The two had not seen each other for a long time, and now, upon meeting again, there was an unfamiliar feeling between them. Alice thought, time truly is a good medicine that dulls everything. Once, the man who had shared a lifetime with her, making her believe he would forever remain in her heart, now felt like a stranger upon their reunion. The two exchanged updates like old friends. Leo looked at her deeply and softly asked, "Didn't you say you would stay in the capital? Why did you come back to a city?" In his teasing tone, there was a hint of caution. "You can't bear to part with me? Not planning to get a divorce anymore? Marriage is definitely going to end. I can't delay you and Sophia any longer, right?" Alice shook her head. Now, when mentioning Sophia, she is already very calm. The past grievances and unwillingness have all faded away with time. Leo tugged at the corner of his lips. "I'm not with her." Alice was taken aback. She looked at Leo, her eyes filled with curiosity, but Leo looked back at her openly, his Adam's apple slightly moving, as if waiting for her to ask. Alice opened her mouth, hesitated for a moment, and ultimately swallowed her confusion. "Since we have already decided to divorce and will have no further ties, why ask more?" She swallowed her curiosity and calmly asked him, "When do you think would be a good time for us to get the divorce certificate? I need to submit an application." Leo looked at her helplessly and said, "You are currently working in a city, so getting this application approved won't be easy." Alice seemed to not notice the reluctance in his tone and simply said, "Then you should pay more attention to it. Let's turn this page as soon as possible." After drinking a belly full of tea, Alice declined Leo's dinner invitation and slowly returned to her rental apartment. Leo also returned home alone. For the past 4 years, he had lived alone and had gradually gotten used to this kind of life. Sophia had come to find him a few times, but he truly did not want to get involved with Sophia again. Even if he were to remarry in the future, he should find someone unrelated to everything that happened before. And it couldn't be Sophia. Leo reflected on Alice's appearance today, feeling an unshakable regret in his heart. He lay in bed, burdened with heavy emotions, and closed his eyes. This sleep seems to have lasted particularly long. He dreamed of Alice. In his dream, he and Alice spent a lifetime together. Chapter 23. The next day, when Alice was returning home from grocery shopping, David was waiting for her downstairs. "I brought you something. Should I carry it up for you?" He was holding a large package in one hand, which included a pillow and quilt that she had asked someone to make and sent him to pick up. Nowadays, the variety of items sold in department stores is increasing, and many people prefer the factory goods sold there. But Alice is different. She still prefers handmade cotton quilts. The cotton in the quilt is very soft. Sleeping in it feels like lying on a cloud. When she was studying in the capital, she took a train and traveled a long way from a city, bringing a quilt with her. After sleeping for 4 years, the cotton in the quilt became hard, so she didn't bring it back. Upon returning to a city, she found someone to make a new quilt, and it just so happened that the quilt maker's home was near David's, so she asked him to help her deliver the quilt. David was wearing a white shirt, blue jeans, and old-fashioned shoes. With his hair neatly combed, he carried her pillow and quilt in one hand and brought her pastries and snacks in the other. Alice took the pastry from his hand and said to him, "Come with me." David carried the quilt and followed her upstairs. After the reform and opening up, the commodity housing economy in a city began to take shape, and many families in the family area had people on leave without pay, renting out the houses allocated by their units to supplement their household income. The house Alice rented was an old teacher's house allocated by First Middle School in a city. It was a long, narrow one-bedroom apartment, slightly cramped, but she had managed it very well. Alice placed the pastry on the table and poured a glass of water for David. "Sit for a while. Look at all the sweat on your forehead." David took out a handkerchief and wiped his forehead. He gulped down a few sips of water, his Adam's apple bobbing. The summer heat seemed to make people's hearts even more restless. He looked at Alice, his gaze sliding from the hem of her checkered skirt all the way down to her delicate ankle. "Ollie, how smoothly did you manage to get the divorce certificate from Leo?" After hesitating for a long time, he finally spoke those words. When they were in university, the two attended different schools. However, since they were in the same city, they inevitably crossed paths. He knew that Alice was already married and that she was on the brink of divorce due to a breakdown in her relationship with her partner. However, as long as that certificate is not issued, he cannot step beyond the bottom line for a day. Even during these 4 years, he has silently watched her for a long time. It's just that he doesn't dare to break through that final layer of gauze. It's coming soon. He needs to submit the application first, Alice said softly. David slightly lowered his head, a faint blush spreading behind his ears. For a moment, the room fell silent. David held the glass cup with both hands, the cup sliding in his grip, making a faint sound. He raised his head, looked at Alice, and opened his mouth. Just then, a knock suddenly sounded at the door. "So," David buried his words back in his throat. He watched Alice turn to open the door, thinking to himself, there will be plenty of time in the future. However, when the door opened, the person standing outside surprised both of them. "What are you doing here?" She slightly raised her head, resting one hand on the doorframe, looking at Leo. For some reason, looking at him again at this moment made her feel that his aura had changed somewhat, but she couldn't quite articulate what had changed. Clearly, he was still the same person. Alice buried that strange feeling deep in her heart and asked, "Is there something wrong?" Leo's expression was somber, his eyes like a bottomless deep lake. His gaze swept from her shoulder into the room, staring fixedly at David. David unexpectedly felt a bit anxious. He harbored a desire for Alice, so facing her husband, who was still not divorced, he naturally felt guilty. This comrade looks very familiar. Leo held Alice's wrist, pulling her hand away from the doorframe, and walked straight in. He walked step by step to David's side. He was very tall, with a straight back and an imposing presence. David stood up and glanced at Alice. "I am Ollie's high school classmate." He extended his hand. "My name is David." The last time they met was 4 years ago when David was carrying review materials and saw Alice off to the bus station. Logically, they should have just passed by each other and not remembered one another. However, they both remembered each other. Leo said softly, "Comrade, I need to discuss some family matters with Ollie. If you have nothing else to do, how about?" He raised his hand towards the door, clearly trying to usher someone out. If it were an ordinary person, Seeing Leo kicking someone out would definitely make them leave quickly. However, David knows about the relationship between Alice and Leo. He stood still, motionless, and glanced at Alice. Alice's attention was drawn to the word disgust that Leo had used. She knew that Leo was currently filing for divorce, and that he had come to find her for this application. These matters are indeed not suitable for David to overhear. She spoke up, "David, I have something to discuss with Leo today. Could you please help me deliver something? Next time, I'll treat you to a meal." She nodded at him. David took a deep breath, urging himself in his heart, she hasn't divorced yet. He turned and left, casually taking the door with him. Leo watched the door close, feeling a bit more at ease in his heart. However, before the smile could fully rise at the corners of his lips, Alice turned back and asked him, "Quickly tell me, is there any progress on the divorce application?" Chapter 24. Leo's heart sank. He never imagined that one day, between him and Alice, there would be nothing left to say except for divorce. In comparison, David, who had just been sitting in the small room drinking water, seemed even more despicable. He swallowed the frustration in his heart, sat down on the sofa, and met her gaze filled with urgency. "Ollie, the report can't be submitted for now." After Leo finished speaking, Alice frowned. She pressed on, "Why? What's the problem?" Leo put on a helpless expression. "We agreed earlier to use the excuse of living apart as a couple to file for divorce. But now, your assigned unit is at a City First middle school, and there's no compelling reason for us to divorce. It will naturally be difficult to get this report approved." Alice was filled with disappointment. Her back felt as if all the strength had been drained from it, and she slumped on the sofa. At that time, she and Leo threatened each other, and the final agreement was she would not disclose his infidelity, and he would voluntarily file for divorce. 4 years of living in peace passed. But unexpectedly, they got stuck at this step. In today's era, there is very little tolerance for divorce. The principle is to avoid it if possible. If it weren't for this, Leo wouldn't have endured a lifetime in his previous life, nor would he have been unwilling to divorce Alice. Moreover, not only did he not divorce, but he also tried to maintain his image as a family man in front of others, which was beneficial for his personal reputation. Alice was lost in thought, her eyes revealing a hint of sorrow. Leo sat upright on the other end of the sofa, but his mind was occupied with something else. "Ollie, the divorce papers might take some time to process. So for now, we are still within the duration of the marriage contract." Alice came back to her senses and looked at him with a hint of caution. Leo smiled and said, "I mean no harm. I just hope that while you're staying here, you won't let any single young men come knocking at the door." "What do you mean, Ollie? You now have a stable position, and barring any unforeseen circumstances, you will likely stay in this unit for a lifetime." Leo spoke in a tone of someone with experience, as if he were looking out for her. "You need to pay attention to your reputation and not leave any hidden dangers for the future." What he said was indeed in line with his personality and made a lot of sense. Alice did not refute him. "Thank you for the reminder. I will be careful." Leo felt a sigh of relief in his heart. As the sky grew darker, Alice picked up her teacup. "You see, it's getting late. How about we?" Before she could finish her sentence, Leo interrupted her. "How about we go out to eat at a restaurant instead?" Leo spoke up first. "Definitely no beef hot pot. Let's go to a state-run restaurant and order a few stir-fried dishes." Alice didn't have time to object before he pulled her out the door. In the corridor of the apartment building, they descended the stairs one after the other, and before leaving, they encountered Alice's colleague, who was also assigned to teach at First Middle School in a city. The other party was married with children, holding a child's hand, and looked at Alice with some surprise. "Ollie, what is this?" Before Alice could speak, Leo took the lead and said, "I am Ollie's partner, and we are going out to eat now." "So that's how it is." The colleague smiled at Alice and said, "Why have you never mentioned this before?" Alice just smiled and said nothing. Once they had walked a bit further, she questioned Leo, "Why did you say so much? If I don't clarify this, won't your outing with a younger man spread throughout your workplace?" Leo looked as if it were a matter of course. "This is all for your reputation. Once we are divorced, You can explain everything to everyone. Alice felt a wave of frustration inside. Yet she couldn't pinpoint any fault in Leo. She vaguely sensed that this feeling was very familiar. It was like a previous life. No matter what she wanted to do, Leo had all sorts of reasons to oppose and suppress her, and he could articulate it so well, as if it were all for her own good. Alice couldn't help but feel a bit puzzled as she looked at the tall figure in front of her. Chapter 25. For a while, Leo came to her school every weekend. Gradually, everyone knew that Alice was married, and her husband worked at the 546 factory. Some even asked Alice, "Ollie, why don't you just move back to the family area? There's a direct bus from the 546 family area to our first middle school, and it's not far at all." Alice smiled and brushed it off. However, looking back on it later, she felt that something was particularly off about it. When Leo came to find her again, she suppressed her anger and prepared to have a serious talk with him. Leo came into her small house carrying a large bag of meat and vegetables, and said to her, "Let's just make something simple at home today. No need to eat out." Alice sat on the sofa, watching him busily moving around in the kitchen. She had a slightly outrageous guess in her mind, but it was still unconfirmable for the time being. Leo made 4 dishes and a soup, one of which was egg drop soup, and he specially added black pepper, which suited her taste. After Alice finished her meal, she put down her chopsticks and suddenly said, "Could you bring me some black tea? The one we used to drink." What was the brand called again? Ing Hong No 9. After Leo finished speaking, he suddenly froze for a moment. He raised his head and looked at Alice. Alice looked at him coldly, her expression filled with hatred, disgust, and mostly disbelief. "A few days ago, my colleague gave me this brand of black tea to drink." Leo, how long are you going to keep pretending? Alice slammed the chopsticks down on the table. Both of them were from a city, and at this time, the flow of goods was not smooth. Black tea was unavailable in many department stores, and they had no habit of drinking black tea, let alone the brand that we used to drink. The habit of drinking black tea developed between the two of them was in a previous life. When Leo was 45, he visited the government of Hong Kong for a study tour organized by his organization, and brought back a large number of local specialties, including 2 boxes of black tea. Alice didn't like drinking it at first. She still preferred green tea, but since Leo loved it, they always kept black tea at home, and gradually she got used to drinking it. For Leo at this moment, if he hadn't remembered the events of his previous life, he wouldn't have been able to know what the brand we drank was, let alone blurt it out like that. The two sat in silence. At this moment, beneath their youthful appearances, there are 2 souls aged with white hair. They once spent the most passionate years together, only to extinguish the warmth of their souls alongside each other, moving towards indifference and death. For 30-year-old Leo, he cannot withstand being repeatedly neglected by Alice, nor can he make such subtle and gentle efforts to please her. For 70-year-old Leo, he is unwilling to easily give up the affection that has accompanied him for half a lifetime, and he will not be driven away by Alice's cold words. The contrast between the 2 souls was so intense that Alice felt a strong sense of disconnection during this time, easily extracting Leo's words from the details of their future interactions. Since her rebirth, the calm that Alice had strived to maintain was now completely gone. She could be gentle and calm with the 30-year-old Leo, because he was not the man who had deceived her for a lifetime. But now, she was facing the Leo who had once shared a life with her. "You have been thinking about Sophia your whole life. Isn't it good that I am divorcing you now? Setting you free?" Alice's eyes were filled with melancholy and confusion. Leo's Adam's apple bobbed as if in confession, slowly lowering his head in front of Alice. "I'm sorry, Ollie." His voice was choked with emotion. "I'm sorry." Chapter 26. For Alice at this moment, Leo's belated apology held no meaning anymore. "If you really want to apologize, then hurry up and divorce me." Alice looked at him coldly. Outside the window, the summer sun poured through, casting light on the ground. Though it was such a warm color, it could not change the icy silence within the room. "Ollie, we once spent a lifetime together." Leo's Adam's apple bobbed slightly. His usually flirtatious peach blossom eyes were now focused on her, filled with pleading. "In a marriage, isn't there bound to be some bumps along the way? I already know I was wrong. So why can't you? Just because you know you were wrong, does that mean the previous hurt no longer exists? Just because you know you were wrong, does that mean I must forgive you? Alice's voice grew increasingly high-pitched. It was as if she didn't care at all that this small house, with its thin walls, might leak the words she and Leo were exchanging at that moment. When anger and sadness reach their peak, one simply cannot care about so-called public opinion or judgment. She just wants to pour out the anger that has been buried in her heart for many years at this moment. Tears brimmed in her eyes. She cried, not because she was sad about Leo's actions, but because she was crying for her past, crying for her foolishness, crying for the life she could not reclaim. You think that if you realize your mistakes and are willing to return home, I must accept you. You think that if you apologize to me and pretend to be nice, I must joyfully accept it. You might want to say, a wayward son returning is worth more than gold. Are you willing to be that returning son for me, and remain loyal to the family in the future? Alice stood up. She looked down at Leo from above. But why must I forgive you? She almost shouted this sentence. Do I not have the right to choose not to forgive? The harm has already been done. Just like a broken mirror. No matter how you piece it together, it will never return to its original form. Alice grabbed the man's collar, tears streaming down her face. Leo, I will never forgive you for the harm you caused me and the betrayal of our family. I will absolutely never live with you again if you want me to return to the days of our previous life. Let me tell you, dream on. Leo was rendered speechless by her. It seems that until today, he has only just realized how much the Alice before him has changed compared to the Alice of his previous life. If it were the Ollie of his previous life, she would have scolded him at most, then given him the cold shoulder for a while, and eventually softened like a frog slowly boiled in warm water under his submissive demeanor. But at this moment, Alice was no longer the person she once was. She didn't care for his apology, nor did she accept his compensation. All she wanted was to stay far away from him. Leo, I was somewhat polite to you before, but that was because the real 30-year-old you is not like the one from my previous life, who deceived me for a lifetime. Alice wiped her tears and said word by word, but you remember everything now. You clearly remember everything. He clearly remembers everything. How she was humble, cautious, and like a moth to a flame, spending a lifetime with him. But in this life, he didn't even start with an apology. He only wanted to use those trivial gestures to make up for everything, trying to bring her back to the path of their previous life. Alice felt disgusted. She found him and everything related to him utterly repulsive. Alice looked at him coldly. Leo, for me right now, getting a divorce from you is my top priority. If you continue to drag this out, I will find your workplace and clarify the situation between you and Sophia with your boss. I'm not afraid of losing face or being pointed at. At worst, I'll just quit this job and go south to work. Alice opened the door and looked at him coldly. I'm giving you half a month to sort this out. You'd better take care of it. Chapter 27. After putting aside her pride, Alice finally managed to get a divorce certificate from Leo. Holding the green divorce certificate, she walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau and looked up at the clear blue sky. The sunlight was too glaring, and the wind too noisy, causing a sharp pain in her eyes. Tears slid down her cheeks as she raised the back of her hand to wipe them away. Leo looked gloomy, with dark circles under his eyes, as if he hadn't slept for days. He put the green divorce certificate into his pocket, the hand in his pocket clenched into a fist, veins bulging, trembling slightly. Regret? Of course, there is regret. Regret for being tempted in the moment and hurting his beloved. Regret for not being able to correct his mistakes in time, thus losing the chance for repentance. He stood at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau, watching Alice's silhouette. In an instant, countless memories flashed through his mind. He remembered her, in a red coat, marrying him with her youthful and delicate face. She looked up at him, her heart and eyes filled with him. He remembers that she sat on the hospital bed, wrapped in a headscarf, pale-faced, and smiled at him when she gave birth to their first child. He remembers that when he contracted the plague and had a fever for days and nights, she stayed with him in the hospital, leaning by his bedside for several days, watching over him as he received treatment. He remembers that later, as they both grew old, She watched over his meals every day, forbidding him from drinking alcohol or eating sweets. He remembers everything. He remembers her appearance at every age, the details of their time together, and how she was always there to help him through every hardship. However, he couldn't remember what he had done for her. After Leo, he felt an indescribable sadness. He covered his face, and his tall figure seemed to suddenly grow old. The 30-year-old young man seemed to have his straight back hunch over in that moment. He covered his face, sobbing uncontrollably at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau. Disregarding his image, he knew clearly that the woman who loved him the most in this world would no longer share her life with him. Suddenly, a pair of white leather shoes appeared in front of him. Leo's heart skipped a beat. He trembled as he lifted his head, expecting to see the person he had been longing for. However, standing in front of him was a face that had become somewhat unfamiliar. Sophia's eyes also carried an indescribable weariness as she handed him a handkerchief. "Leo, wipe your tears. That woman isn't worth your sadness." Almost as soon as she finished speaking, she was suddenly yanked away by a strong force. The man who pulled her grabbed her arm and slapped her hard. The other party pointed at her and shouted, "You shameless woman! You haven't even divorced yet. And you're out here seducing men. You can't live without a man. Can you?" Alice stood not far away, watching this farce. It was a long time later that she learned from the gossip of her relatives what had happened afterward. Leo did not lie to her. During the years she was in university, he indeed did not actively contact Sophia again. However, Sophia would occasionally come to see him. "Every time I look for him, it's always to ask for help." Leo is a passionate man. With his tall and handsome stature, he seems to find it hard to refuse a woman's plea when she plays the victim. Thus, he helped Sophia twice. It was these two acts of kindness that made Sophia unable to forget him. However, at that time, Leo was indeed no longer interested in her. His help was merely out of youthful friendship. After several attempts to test the waters, Sophia finally realized that Leo would not come back. So, she quickly found a way out for herself. During her junior year, she started dating again, and her new boyfriend was a local from a city, with a bit of family wealth, and he treated her quite well. Sophia decided to start her life anew. She went to the Civil Affairs Bureau with the man to obtain a marriage certificate. On the day of the marriage certificate, I met Leo. Chapter 28. The events that followed felt like an absurd farce. The handkerchief that Sophia handed to Leo ignited her husband Xue Kaitong's suspicions. Xue Kaitong then found in the luggage that Sophia left at school a collection of love letters she had cherished for many years, all written to Leo, along with some replies from Leo. The words in the letters were very explicit. Xue Kaitong couldn't take it at that moment and had a big fight with Sophia. Sophia's tears fell like pearls as she cried. "That was all before I started dating you. Who doesn't have a past?" Xue Kaitong endured it. However, on the day of the wedding banquet for both families, an unexpected guest arrived uninvited. Sophia never expected that on her wedding day, Lu Baozhen, who had been engaged to her during her time in the countryside, would find out the location and come looking for her. The wedding banquet turned into a farce, and the three of them ended up at the police station. Immediately after, everything Sophia had ever done was brought to light. This included her improper relationship with Leo at that time. The letters exchanged between her and Leo clearly showed the signatures and dates, with many of them being correspondence after Leo's marriage. These letters were all posted on the factory bulletin board by the angry Xue family. It was only at this moment that everyone realized. I said, "Why does Alice insist on divorcing Captain Chi? It turns out it was like this. Then someone like that can't be kept. How can you have an affair after getting married? A man can't be called an affair, right? Isn't it Sophia who is having an affair? Why can't a man be called an affair? Gender equality. He is a male affair." Leo caused a negative public opinion impact due to this incident, first making a self-criticism in the factory, and then facing a temporary suspension as punishment. Alice was not concerned about these matters. She embarked on her brand new life. Although teaching had its own challenges, it was already 1,000 times better compared to her previous life. She lived in a one-bedroom apartment for which she paid rent, attending classes, cooking, and tending to her flowers every day. For a moment, Life seemed to pass by quite leisurely and comfortably. However, within the system, single and unmarried women are always urged to get married. David appeared at just the right time. He seemed to fill the void in her life. On weekends, he invited her to go out for a walk, visiting Sanfang Qisheng and paying respects to the earth god. He took her to the riverside to watch the fireworks, lifted her hand to pluck a hibiscus flower to place in her hair, and bought her street-side sugarcane juice. Taking a sip, it was sweet to the heart. Alice would always accept his invitations. She felt that the part of her soul that was old and dry seemed to be gradually filled and enriched by his vibrant life. She didn't even know if this could be considered love, but she felt that every moment spent with David made her happy. On the page before New Year's Day, it snowed heavily. The snow covered the entire city completely. Looking out the window, it was a silver world, like a brand new universe. Alice, wearing thick cotton shoes, walked hand in hand with David in the snow. Is it cold? David's voice was very gentle. I remember there's a stall selling roasted sweet potatoes around the corner. Shall we buy some later? A little, Alice said. David stopped, took off his scarf, and wrapped it around her neck. The long scarf, carrying a bit of his warmth, wrapped around her neck 1 circle, 2 circles, 3 circles. When she finished tying it, David suddenly smiled. Do you remember? Back in high school, there was a time when you secretly knitted scarves after class? Alice remembered. At that time, both fabric and cotton had to be purchased with ration tickets, but yarn did not. During the big break, she squeezed in time to knit scarves. At that time, many boys in the class were guessing who the scarf you were knitting was for. David softly said. At that time, I was thinking, it would be great if I could give it to myself. Alice smiled slightly. That was for my dad. Her tone was nostalgic. Back then, my dad always had to work the night shift. In the winter, when it snowed, his collar would be soaked with snow on his way home. I thought about making him a scarf. Seeing David wanting to say something but hesitating, she took the initiative to hold his hand. If you want, I'll get you one this year. He picked her up in his arms, his gaze still pure and bright like a youth's. That's settled then. No backing out. She laughed and playfully urged him to put her down quickly. David set her down, slowly lowering his head, wanting to kiss her while no one was around. But suddenly he froze. Alice opened her eyes and turned her head following David's gaze. At the corner stood a man in a black wool coat, looking desolate. Chapter 29. Ollie, can we talk? Leo stood under a tree laden with snow, looking at Alice with a forlorn expression. David frowned, one hand around Alice's shoulder. Looking back at him, Alice lowered her eyelids, gazing at the white snow-covered ground. After a moment, she patted David's hand. I'll talk to him for a bit. You wait for me here, okay? She didn't let David leave. For this still somewhat unstable relationship, she didn't want to give him any room for misunderstanding. Okay, I'll wait for you here. David let go of her hand and watched her walk slowly past. Alice's cotton shoes left a trail of footprints in the snow. Finally, she slowly walked up to Leo, standing under the same tree, locking eyes with him. Is something wrong? She asked in a calm tone. Leo looked at her with an almost greedy expression. Half a year has passed, and she seems to have become more beautiful. The hint of melancholy in her eyes has faded, replaced by a youthful positivity and composure. I came to say goodbye to you. Leo cleared his throat. I thought you wouldn't want to see me, so I went straight to your house. I knocked on the door for a long time, and the neighbor next door told me you weren't home. He rubbed his nose. Did I cause you more trouble again? Since you know I don't want to see you, why did you come? Alice stood with her hands in her pockets, looking at him with a calm expression. Leo didn't speak. He was a tall and strong man, but over the past 6 months, those events had nearly broken his spine. He wanted to stay in a city, even if it meant watching her from afar. But he couldn't stay. It was only at this moment that he realized his own weakness. I'm leaving a city, and I might not be able to come back for a long time, he said. I thought at least I should tell you. He pressed his lips together. I've been transferred to North City, too. You don't have to tell me, Alice said. I don't want to know. Leo was stunned. He displayed a look of utter disarray. as if he had been slapped in the face. Alice looked at him, her face still wearing a detached expression. I think you moved from a city because you want to start over. So, you don't have to tell me where you went. She opened her mouth but ultimately couldn't hold back. Leo, starting over in a different place is also good. Just this time, don't be a jerk again. Find a girl you like, treat her well, and don't be fickle. Leo shook his head, just staring at her intently, as if he wanted to engrave her image in his memory. He wanted to tell her, there will be no more. He has tasted the pain of being a lover and has suffered enough from the punishment of betrayal. All his intense emotions are closely related to her. For the rest of his life, he will never truly love another person. If one day you still want to find me, just call this number. He took a steel plate out of his pocket and pressed it into her hand. Ollie, you suffered because of me, so you want to choose someone else. But don't trust him too much. I was young once, and I know the inherent flaws of young men. His words faltered in the bright gaze of Alice. In that moment, he deeply felt his own ugliness. In the dark corners of his heart, he still hoped she would be disappointed again and return to his side. Even in this situation, he still had not truly wished her well. He couldn't continue speaking, turned around, and waved goodbye to Alice. Alice watched him turn away, sending him off as he walked further away, until he disappeared from sight. She threw the small steel plate Leo had left her into the Ring City River by the tree. Leo gave her a steel plate, fearing that the small piece of paper would get lost, the writing would fade, and she wouldn't be able to find him. But from the moment she was reborn, she had already made up her mind to completely erase this person from her life. From now on, whether he repeated his old tricks or turned over a new leaf, it was no longer her concern. She deserves a better, her own, brilliant life. In the years that followed, Alice did not hear any news of Leo. Some say he did not fare well in North City, later ventured into business, made a fortune, remarried, had children, and lived a life of success. There are also those who say that he lived alone all his life, faced failures in his career, developed a drinking addiction, and later froze to death in the snow on a winter day while drunk. Another summer has come, and Alice is teaching the senior class. At this point, she is already a seasoned teacher who has participated in the grading of the college entrance examinations several times. She wrote a large number on the blackboard, 245. Alice's voice echoed in the classroom. Students, there are 245 days until the college entrance examination. The college entrance examination is the fairest, most just opportunity in our country that can change your destiny. Getting into university will give you new steps, new opportunities, and a new life. Students, please give your all in the next 9 months and fight for your lives.